Praise the Lord. Great God and Father of mankind, forgive our foolish ways and reclothe us in our rightful minds in deeper reverence praise. And so now we come and ask that you will fill us now. Fill us with thine hallowed presence. Come, O come, and fill us now. We thank you for holy time, the holy Sabbath day of rest, which has been set apart for holy use. And in this very room, we ask for you to come and sup with us and feed us till we want no more. And bless each one that has received the invitation, that they will spare no moment to come on in. And let us be blessed by your infilling presence. Now minister unto us as we wait upon you. We thank you, ask that you may cleanse and purify us from all our sins and from all unrighteousness. And Lord God, at this time when earth's inhabitants are fretful and very fearful of the coronavirus, we serve a mighty God, the everlasting Father and the Prince of Peace, the one who heals all our diseases and binds up all our wounds. And so teach us how to trust you more, because you've not given us the spirit of fear, but of power. You've given us the spirit of love. And more than that, you've given us the spirit of a sound mind. And so many people whose minds are just failing them for fear. And we just come to trust in your unfailing love, that you may help us to be grounded and anchored with confidence in your word, knowing that you'll see us through. As Michael, the one who is delivered from many dangers seen and unseen, is able to deliver us over and over again. We praise you for this moment. In his holy name, Yeshua, our King. Hallelujah. Amen. Well, Sabbath greetings, everyone. This is Garrick Augustus, your host, and we're doing an impromptu Sabbath School program coast to coast and around the world. And those of you who do have Facebook, you can actually do a live streaming from this site, directly simulcasting over your Facebook page, and get this out there to the broader world. All right, so we've already prayed, and I'd like to open the subject for us to look on Daniel chapter 11. This is the Sabbath School lesson for this week. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, the quarterly has tried to do the longest prophecy in the Bible in 1 week. And it's a mammoth task. It's hardly practical to cover such a very wide subject with lots of historical foundations to be constructed with sufficient accuracy so that the reader or the student can gain a foundation knowledge of what is happening. So we will strive today to go through this, and remember, this is not like our afternoon program, so we will have you are free to have communication back and forth. I would just urge us to manage our background noises. So we still need to mute, if we're not actively speaking, to mute out the background noises. I appreciate that greatly. So I believe you can all see my screen, and it is showing what we have here, what we're discussing. Lesson number 12 in Daniel, from north and south to the beautiful land. Now, the very title of the message is so profound that we need to appreciate what is really stated here. From north to south to the beautiful land. What is the beautiful land? Where is that beautiful land? That is an important question. That's not really covered in the lesson, but the title that the Lord allowed them to give it is so far-reaching, because you're going from the king of the north to the king of the south, and really it should be king of the south to the king of the north, then to the beautiful land. Be that as it may, it ended in the beautiful land. And so a part of our study today is to discover where the story ends. In the beautiful land. So the great controversy that we're going through with coronavirus and all the other things going on, there is an undercurrent that of prophecy that God wants us to understand how the story ends. We've seen the script. We've been to the other side. And we want to now explore the beautiful land. Now, the contents of chapter 11 are the direct words from the angel Gabriel. These are not Daniel's words. This is the angel Gabriel dictating to Daniel the things that Michael told him. He had said prior to this, Daniel, there is none that holds with me in these things, but Michael, your prince. In fact, in Daniel chapter 10, we study these chapters in silos, and that is not accurate. When we study them in silos, because that's not how the prophecy was given. The prophecy was not given in silos. So I give you a clear illustration here. In Daniel chapter 10, as it introduces chapter 11, here's Daniel 10, and we want to get the speaker here. And in verse 18, and I'm going to take 18 through 21, says, then there came again and touched me one like the appearance of a man. And he strengthened me and said, O man, greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be unto thee. Be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened. And he said, let my Lord speak. And said, let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. Here's the key now. Then said he, the angel now is speaking. Then said he, knowest thou wherefore I am come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth. And there's none that holdeth with me in these things but Michael your prince. Also, chapter 11, verse 1, also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. This is the angel speaking. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. So now you see that this is the angel Gabriel who is actually speaking, not Daniel. But I wanted to step back a little too. And let me bring it on my screen here now, because I ran a little ahead of myself there. So let me see if I can get in synchronous motion with my screen. So, an important thing in that second paragraph there, then said he, knowest thou wherefore I am come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with, not against, but with the prince of Persia. And when I am gone forth from Persia, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. When I leave Persia, the Grecians will come and waste Persia. God was protecting the Persian Empire. His church was there. Very interesting how he operates. The angel is saying, I'm fighting with the prince of Persia. Now the prince of Persia is in twofold here. Certainly, Satan was there in the room, prince of darkness. But more importantly, the prince of Persia, the king of Persia, was very much there. He was to make decisions touching the operation of the church of God on earth. Satan knew this. And he sent adversaries to weaken the heart and weaken the hands of those who should go to build the temple at Jerusalem. And they spread a lot of rumors. You read it in Ezra chapter 4. A lot of rumors were spread abroad, and Cyrus said he was in a point of double-guessing himself, questioning whether or not this was the right decision. And so the angel Gabriel was the one there fighting with them. As the Persians built, God said in Isaiah 45, I'm going to give you the wealth of the riches of dark places, of secret places. You'll open the 2-leaf gates and you'll set my captives free. So Satan knew that the 2,300-day prophecy weighed on the commencement of these things. And he really put up a fight against the prince of Persia, and God had to send Gabriel to go down there and fight with, not against, but fight with the prince of Persia. This is Cyrus. God had to fight with him to strengthen his hand, not fighting against him. So after, now watch now, the Persian Empire, and let me just step forth one slide. Here's the Persian Empire. They acquired a lot of land. Look how far they went. They went all the way to Africa, all the way down here to Ethiopia, Egypt, Ethiopia, Libya, across North Africa, the entire Middle East, taking over, this portion, going Macedonia, on the edge of Greece. Here's Greece, going all the way up to Macedonia, Thrace. This is Europe, Western Europe. Now Turkey, the land of Turkey, Syria, all of this, Iraq, all of this, all the way up here in going over to Afghanistan, India. Here's the Hindush or India, Pakistan, all of these places, Iran, all of these places were the Persian Empire. And so the angel Gabriel was fighting with the military political system of Persia to allow them to conquer territories and acquire wealth to build the temple at Jerusalem. After the angel left the Persians, he said, and look at the language here, and now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I am gone, after I have left from fighting with them, the prince of Greece will come, and he's going to swallow them up. So, the protector of the Persian Empire, and the one who allowed them to have their victories, was not their military might, but because the angel of God was fighting with them. Similarly, Alexander the Great, he didn't become great on his own. This is what the angel is telling us. He said, when I'm gone, the prince of Grecia is going to come. Gabriel went to fight with the Grecians now, against the Persians. Alexander the Great had an army of less than 50,000, around 47,000 fighting men, cavalry and, the infantry combined. The Media Persians, they had an army of over 500,000. And at the end of the war, Alexander's army, the casualty was less than 1,000. He was outnumbered by almost 13-1. Yet the dead and wounded numbered less than 1,000. Because the angel of God fought with him, not against him. And the lesson is that great nations have fallen when they were strongest, but least independent of God. Great nations have fallen when they were at the height of their glory, but most independent of God. Least dependent on God, or most independent of Him. And that lesson has been true all throughout. If you look on the map here, you'll see, here's Greece. Look at this little nation. This little nation over here, Greece. Look at the huge empire of the Medes and the Persians. Little Greece took over this entire territory of the Persian kingdom because the angel of God was fighting with them. Now, the United States has fought many wars, and notable ones, World War I, World War II. And we won not because we had the strongest military, but the angels of God were fighting with our troops. That is a take-home lesson. When the angel of God stopped fighting with you, you read in the book of Jeremiah, it said, when the Babylonians come to take the city, even if you fight against them and just three Babylonians are left, they're still going to burn down the city of Jerusalem. Now that is serious. Even if you routed them and 3 men are left, they're still going to take you home to Babylon. And your buttocks will beat in the wind. That's what God said. Some people don't understand why I trust Him so much, because His words are the more sure words of truth. There's nothing surer in this word than the word of God. They're sure to come to pass. In fact, when Daniel received the dream, the interpretation of the dream in chapter 2, in 45 he said, the dream is certain and the interpretation thereof sure. So we're studying today the more sure word of prophecy. It's not even the sure word, but the more sure word of prophecy. All right, so we're officially now going to open Daniel chapter 11. I thought that introduction was needful. Daniel chapter 11, verses 1 and 2. Here it comes. Also I, speaking of Gabriel, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, Gabriel that is, stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee, speaking to Daniel, the truth. Behold, Gabriel is still speaking. There shall stand yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. So, we should find somewhere in the history of this Persian kingdom, where Daniel was residing at this time, where there are 3 successive kings, and the last one, so these are the last 4 kings, really, of the Medo-Persian Empire. The 4th one is going to be a really wealthy man. It says and let me not say the last 4 kings, but the last 4 kings as a countdown to this Greco-Persian war, because the Persian Empire continued a little after this war still. But so the 4th of these kings is going to be far wealthier than them all combined. He's going to have more wealth than all the kings, his predecessors combined. And that made sense. If the angel of God is fighting with you, and you're acquiring territory, then your booty from war, gains, will be exceedingly great. And this is what we're seeing. So, these 3 kings, the first of the 3 was one by the name of Cambyses. He reigned from the period of 530 to 522 BC, between 8 and 9 years. And then there's another one, an interloper known as Smerdis, the false. He's known as the false Smerdis, or the usurper, a usurper king. He reigned during the year 522 BC. Didn't stay for long. They routed him. After that, the 3rd king, you remember the prophecy says 3 kings shall come up, Darius, or Darius, the 1st. And he's known as Darius or Darius the Great as well, as he ruled for a very long time, from 522 BC to 486 BC. That's a very long reign for a king. Yeah. What is that? 22 plus 16, that's 38 years. So here Darius had this very long reign. And we go to the 4th king now, the last, and this one should be the wealthiest of them all. In fact, his wealth will far exceed the wealth of those who were before him. And this is a very famous king in the book of Esther. His name is Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes or Artaxerxes the First. He was wedded to Queen Esther, that royal princess, the Hebrew girl. And so the prophecy does say that the 4th king will be wealthier than them all. And he, this 4th king, would stir up the realm of Grecia. And this is exactly what happened. Artaxerxes went forth and fought against the Greeks in battle. He had an army so large, he had 1,200 ships. And by the historian the historian, another historian account, which most historians says that he exaggerated. He said it was 3,000 ships, a navy of 3,000 ships. And I don't remember his name right now, but the ships are so many that they were able to use the ships to create a land bridge here. So they created a land bridge going across to Greece from over here, from the Asia Minor over to Greece. That's how many ships they had. It was just a land bridge they could make to go over in this little region. So I circle it here. Okay, that's Herodotus. Herodotus made that claim. That's just, for background knowledge. So go back to where we were. So this fourth king, Artaxerxes, is the one that we read about in Queen Esther. And that was a very famous king in Bible history, and God gives us direction on that. That battle in which they fought, Xerxes or Artaxerxes the First, the ancient history book says the Battle of Salamis, which was a disaster for the Persian fleet and cost Xerxes dearly. This fourth king, he went up against the Greek army, and it was he lost. He had a very terrible loss. It says the Battle of Salamis, which followed, was a disaster for the Persian fleet and cost Xerxes dearly. Xerxes returned home limping with a fraction of his army and was forced to eat bark, weeds, and leaves because there's no food left in the regions beyond where they traveled through. So, and he ended up dying a broken man because his greed was more than he could contain. So in my notes I said the naval battle at Salamis, Greece, was fought in September of 480 BC in the Saronic Gulf, in which Xerxes or Ahasuerus squared off against the Grecian armies, those are the Spartans, and was defeated. Now prior to this battle, in August of that year, his courage was increased when his army scored a signal victory against the Greeks at the Battle of Thermopylae, during which they burned the city of Athens, Greece. And this would leave a vexation in the heart of every Greek leader. And this vexation would eventually lead to the return of the Hellenistic king known as Alexander the Great. And he came to settle the scores with the Persians. The last of the Persian kings was Darius III. And Alexander engaged him in the Battle of Arbela, also called the Battle of Gaugamela, which is, you could say, Erbil, as we know that place now, Erbil in Iraq. It was a very wide plain, and Darius had it graded, leveled for the occasion. They had amassed a large Persian army by now, over 500,000, and so he leveled the playing field so that he could waste the Grecian army. And Alexander, with only 47,000 men, defeated that entire Persian army at the Battle of Arbela or the Battle of Gaugamela, the same place, known as Erbil today in Iraq. And so, in this one decisive victory, Alexander took the entire Medo-Persian Empire away. Here's what the Medo-Persian Empire looked like before, up to this point. Here's what the Greco-Medo-Persian Empire looked like now, after Alexander. This is Empire of Alexander the Great. So here, he took over, he had Greece before, because Macedonia is Greece. He had all of Greece, then he takes all of Turkey, all the Syria, all the way back, Iraq, all the way back over to India, Pakistan, and taking over Iran, the entire Persian Empire. And in the taking of the Persian Empire, he took everything. He was the indomitable force, indomitable king of kings at that time. At only 25 years old, he had conquered the world. Because that was a world leader. And he still went on and prosecuted his war, crossing the Indus River and going deep into India, all the way moving toward China. A very well respected and known king and battle strategist of all times. He died at a very young age. And so the prophecy would give us more on that. Do we have any input, any participation, reaction here before we continue? I don't want this to be necessarily a monologue, but we will certainly receive your input. This is a prophecy that's little understood, even by the authors of the lesson. Well, I mean, many of you who come here today, I would imagine that you've looked on the Sabbath School lesson, so feel free to give any input that the lesson itself has cited, and if it's consistent with the scriptures, then certainly we'll validate. If not, we will discuss it and show why it's a valid view or invalid. So we go now to verses 3 and 4 of Daniel 11. Say, and a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And he shall stand up, and when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion, which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others beside those. So here we see that after, remember what the angel said to Daniel, that 4 kings shall stand up in Persia. The fourth will be richer than all the 3 before him combined. And it says, at the end of this, it says, and of course the Grecians raise up against the realm of Grecia. Then in 3, a mighty king shall stand up. This mighty king is going to stand up out of the realm of Grecia, and shall rule with great dominion. He will have great dominion, and I showed you the dominion of Alexander. He ruled with great dominion, and do according as he willed. There was no power that could stand in his sight, as we learn of the ram and the he-goat in chapter 8. And when he shall stand up, that means when he becomes real great, when he's at the pinnacle of success, his kingdom shall be broken. And that means the untimely death of Alexander. At only 31, 32 years old, he caught maybe the West Nile flu, dengue fever, or some malaria. It's been conjectured different ways, but he ended up dying at a very young age of 31, 32 years old. And his son was only 18 months, not old enough to sit on the throne. And in the fullness of time, his kingdom was divided among his 4 generals. And this is where the Bible says, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. Not to the 4 winds of heaven, but toward. So toward the 4 winds of heaven means in the 4 cardinal directions of the compass. That the Grecian Empire will be divided according to the quadrants of the compass, east, west, north, and south. And but not to his posterity, not to his progeny, not to his seed. Even to that level of detail, the Bible is accurate. Not to his seed, nor according to his dominion, the successor in line, nor according to the dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, just like we saw the wings of the lion plucked up, so his kingdom shall be plucked up. No longer, there won't be a name of succession, or as we say, in the kings of Britain, there won't be that dynastic rule. We have Harry the First, Harry the Second, James the First, James the Second, and so Elizabeth the First, Elizabeth the Second. There won't be that dynastic rule, that progeny coming from Alexander, because it would be plucked up. His kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides those. So the kingdom that he ruled will be divided along the four cardinal points. And this is exactly what happened after Alexander's death. It was given, the kingdom, they tried to maintain it and keep onto it for his son, 18-month-old son. But there were lots of fightings within, and after about 12 years or so, the four generals of Alexander's army agreed to have the settlement. And this is where the idea of the king of the north and the king of the south will come in. So the four generals parted the land, parted the kingdom. And the two that you'll need to remember are the Seleucids in the north and the Ptolemies in the south, because these will be the ones to reign throughout. And I have it here in my notes. After Alexander's death, his empire was eventually divided among the four generals. Seleucus, who went to the east, and I'll show you that in the map shortly. Seleucus went to the east and took over from, Syria, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, all the way back to India. That's the Seleucid dynasty. Then Cassander was in the west, and they were in Thrace and Asia Minor. And there's Lysimachus to the north and Ptolemy to the south. In time, though, and this is the key part, in the fullness of time, Lysimachus in the north took over Cassander's kingdom. Cassander was in the west. So Lysimachus took over Cassander, and so is Lysimachus. He expanded his territory. And then in one fell swoop, Seleucus came and took over Lysimachus, and he took all that Lysimachus had. So Seleucus now became the indomitable king of the north, and Ptolemy became the indomitable king of the south. And so this is how you will see beyond this, the king of the north and the king of the south presented. Now these would rule for a protracted period of time, for thousands of years. So these kings are not two individuals. They represent kingdoms that reign over these territories successfully through time. And let me just say that while there's an individual leader of a kingdom, because President Trump is a symbol of the United States, and so each kingdom has its head. The head of state represents the kingdom to the world. And so in that regard, we could say that the king of the north is an individual person. But more importantly, the king of the north has a dominion over which he rules. And we need to respect that fact as well. So the Seleucid dynasty reigned in the north of the Promised Land, and the Ptolemaic dynasty reigned in the south of the Promised Land. And we'll show that. So here's a map of those divisions. And you'll see here in green we have Seleucus. Seleucus, and you see how wide-ranging, he was a really large kingdom there. And then there's Lysimachus. Lysimachus here in Thrace, in this Thrace and going up to Thessalonica. And then we have Cassander, and that's north in Thrace and such, that represented north. And Cassander would be over in the east, here over in Greece. And there's Ptolemy in the south. Ptolemy's in the south. So these Seleucus finally took over all of this. He took over all of this. And so he became king of the north. While Ptolemy, Soter, remained in the south and became, and was, the regent king of the south. But even after that, in the days of Cleopatra and such, that's still called the king of the south. Although she was a queen, she was called the king of the south. So, that's a designation that the Bible provides. Let me see if there's something I left out here. Yeah, very interestingly, I like this statement here from A.T. Jones. He made a very powerful statement. In this book, CYMFC is the Columbian year and the meaning of the 4 centuries, an address he delivered on Columbus Day in 1892. A.T. Jones says there, when the Amorites had filled up the measure of their iniquity, their place was given to Israel, the people of God. When Israel followed the way of the heathen, filled also the cup of iniquity, God brought upon them the kingdom of Babylon, God brought up the kingdom of Babylon, and took all away. When Babylon had filled up the cup of its iniquity, the power was transferred to Persia. And when the angel was turned away by the wickedness of the Persians, then the prince of Grecia comes in and sweeps it away. So God was working with various governments that were housing the church of God until they corrupted themselves to such a point that he couldn't use them anymore. The same fate awaits the United States. The United States has been the protector of true Christian liberty for going on 300 years now. And the days are coming when these United States will repudiate the very principles of liberty upon which she was founded. And national apostasy will result in national ruin. That day is coming for the United States of America. And in Daniel 11:45, we read about it. The king of the north will come to his end, and none of his allies will come to his support. That's in the future. But we are very close to that future. It's not a far distant future. It is around the corner. I mean, we can see the writing on the wall. Any thoughts or comments out there before we press on? Questions, if any? All right. So, and I'm going to skip over some of the reading I have here. Like Jeremiah 49:36 shows you that the 4 winds were how the Persians divided up, as it says there, Jeremiah 49:36. And upon Elam will I bring the 4 winds from the 4 quarters of the earth, will scatter them toward all those winds. There shall be no nation whither the outcast of Elam shall not come. Elam is where the land of Persia is, and if you saw my commentary on Daniel chapter 8, you'll get to appreciate the Elamites in a more affectionate way. Daniel 11 verses 5 and 6 says, and the king of the south, now we know who the king of the south is. Remember, we saw him, that's the Ptolemy dynasty. And the king of the north is the Seleucid dynasty. So God didn't spend a lot of time with Lysimachus and Cassander because the focus was on Seleucus' empire and Ptolemy's empire. And we've heard a lot about the woman Cleopatra, and we'll see her mentioned in this prophecy as well. A very beautiful queen. I mean, from a physical beauty pageant perspective, she was the latest lady. So it says here, and the king of the south shall be strong. That's the Egyptian power. And one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. And in the end of years, they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. So essentially, just like we have the royal marriages in the common British Empire, the same thing we see here, that the king of the south is offering his daughter in marriage so to keep hegemony, or we say harmony between the two, to keep that type of national unity or international unity. But it didn't work out. He said that the king of the north, the king of the south offered his daughter, but that didn't work out to heal the the divide, the rift. Because God said that there would be two such raging firebrands, the king of the north and the king of the south. And no matter if you put your daughter in the middle to try to create some peace treaty, it's not going to change anything, because I said that they're going to be separate. And that's what the more sure word tells us. These two kings will be separated, and all their strategies will come to naught. As it says in verse 6, in the end of years they shall join themselves together for the king's daughter for the south to come to the king of the north to make an agreement. There's a treaty. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm. But she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in those times. And I provided something here in my notes. It says there, the king of the north, the Seleucid dynasty, and the king of the south, the Ptolemaic, and later Muslim Arab dynasties, because we'll see later on that even until today, Egypt is 90% Muslim. And there's a reason for that, because the king of the south is really the Muslim power, the Islamic power in our world today. We still have the king of the south existing today. People talk mostly about the king of the north, but we need to appreciate the fact that there is also the king of the south. That's the Islamic Muslim power in our world today. The point of reference being Judea in Jerusalem, the epicenter. The Jerusalem land holdings determined these kings in the past. And it will still be true to the end of the chapter. The question of Jerusalem will be the most tantalizing discussion for the king of the north in these very days. I hope you got what I just said. The question of earthly Jerusalem will be among the most tantalizing of international policies that the king of the north has to settle in our day. We haven't identified the king of the north in our days yet, but we will. To abandon Jerusalem from prophecy, though, as the attempt of some is wont to do, is to lose the key of understanding that is prerequisite to come to the correct understanding of Daniel chapter 11. Some, and many, have stated that Jerusalem no longer has anything to do under the sun relevant to end-time Bible prophecy. They are miserably wrong. Unfortunately, among those, some are Seventh-day Adventists who believe that since the stoning of Stephen, God has abandoned the Jews and, by extension, Jerusalem. Jesus did not say that. He said Jerusalem should be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Not until the second coming of Christ, but until the times of Gentiles be fulfilled. And then Jerusalem will become relevant once more. I like the statement from the Adventist Bible Commentary, made in 1978, volume 4, page 866. It's going to give us geographic GPS locations now. From this point on, through much of the chapter, the prophecy focuses on two kingdoms emerging from Alexander's empire, with which God's people, the Jews, had most to do. These were Syria, ruled by the Seleucids, or king of the north I put there, and in Egypt, ruled by Ptolemies, or king of the south, as I inserted. Those bracketed portions are my insertions. I should have put that to the end of the citation. From the geographical standpoint of Palestine, and I need to repeat that, from the geographical standpoint of Palestine, the former was north and the latter south. So there's a geographic fulcrum that differentiated the king of the north and the king of the south. And the prize was always Jerusalem. Whoever controlled Jerusalem was the dominant of the two, or the more dominant of the two. Whichever king had Jerusalem in his parlor, was the dominant force of prophecy for that time. And we'll see that the king of the north lost Jerusalem twice. And he's to win it twice. Okay. All right, so I like this little commentary here, and because this subject is so enriching and confused, so most theologians run away from it. Victor Houteff, God has used the man Victor Houteff to write in exquisite details concerning this power, and I have it on the screen here, which I'll share. Seeing that no human being has lived on and on throughout these centuries, it is obvious that the titles King of the South and King of the North are applicable to two lines of rulers. Two lines of rulers. Not two rulers, but two lines of rulers. Seeing also that no government or kingdom has stood intact throughout the ages, it likewise is obvious that these two lines of rulers, that is, have undergone many supersessions of sovereigns, many regimes. For this reason, the Bible differentiates them by their lineal geographic titles. If we follow the simple Bible guideline, we can never go wrong. But you will see that many people followed the guideline, and when they got to a certain point, they said, good enough, throw you away, we'll use something else. And they end up groping in darkness. We will see that. It is now clear, he continues, it is now clear from the scriptures that the Grecian division south of the Mediterranean, the Ptolemaic, first receives the title King of the South, whereas the division north of the Mediterranean, the Lysimachon, first receives the title King of the North. In relation to the territories of these two lines of rulers, the Mediterranean therefore becomes a point of compass for which they must be reckoned. And the Bible commentary said about as much. The Mediterranean, which Jerusalem is on the Mediterranean coast. And very good history in a nugget here that would take you many, many volumes of history books to go through. I have gone through and validated these dates, and you can do the same. And because I believe in primary source referencing, I will just share this concise history that you can appreciate the content and the value of what we have here. In 281 BC, Lysimachus added to his dominion. That means he defeated Cassander. Lysimachus added to his dominion Cassanders. Then in 279 BC, Seleucus defeated Lysimachus and seized his kingdom, whereupon the eastern, the northern, and the western divisions became one. That one was now known as the northern division, while Ptolemy held his own, the southern division. The Seleucidan dynasty, therefore, ushers in the second northern regime, whereas the Ptolemaic dynasty continued to be the first southern regime. To this point, and he was very clear, to this point, the prophetic vision has been open to all. But from here on, it has remained closed, though many have tried to open it. To open without a key a locked door is, of course, to break the door. But being unbreakable, the door of prophecy that is, the locked door of prophecy is impossible to be opened without the key. Now, the key is only given by God. Even Daniel could not open the vision. The angel told him, Daniel, shut the book and seal it. Daniel 12, verse 4. Until the time of the end. God controls the revelation and the interpretation of the scriptures. So when we go to seminaries and other Bible schools, we don't get, we will learn history and homiletics and so on, how to give good sermons and bring out special features. That's homiletics. That's application of teaching the word. But insofar as uncovering present truth in the scriptures. God has not given it to any and everyone. Holy men of God spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost to write the scriptures, and only holy men of God will speak as they're moved to interpret the scriptures. This is not saying that we can't read the Bible on our own or even study it on our own, but to come to the 100% unadulterated truth, God has to do that. Okay, so I hope that is clear. In this very good piece of history we have on the screen here, 281-279, Lysimachus and Seleucus. Lysimachus defeated Cassander, then Seleucus defeats Lysimachus and takes all that he had from Cassandra plus all that he had for himself, and the entire thing became the Seleucidan dynasty. So I have it here on my screen, which I showed you earlier too. And let me just show it to you one more time. So here we find Lysimachus is here, took over Cassander. And then Seleucus came and took over Lysimachus, who had all of Seleucus and Cassander. So Seleucus, and I show the red, mark. This entire region became a Seleucus' dynasty, or the Seleucid kingdom. When we can appreciate these facts, we will be well positioned to understand the rest of Daniel chapter 11. Move on. So now, the pronouns, you will find pronouns going on, and in order to know where we are, we have to chase down the pronouns. But it's not just chasing down the pronouns, it's to know which one has a reference to the king of the north and king of the south. It's called he and his and he and his. So let's see how to differentiate with the prophetic key. In Daniel 11 verses 15 and 16 and 41, we discover something unique about the king of the north. Daniel 11 from verse 15 says, "So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand." Neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But, verse 16, "But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed." So let me go back and just look at this quickly, and we see how we trace down. You notice I paused a little because the text in blue are my insertions to amplify the content of what we're reading, so we read it accurately. So I'm going to read it with the amplified understanding. KOS means king of the south, and KON means king of the north. So wherever you see going forward, KOS and KON, and I saw it earlier, which I didn't bring attention to, but now I am doing so, we're referring to these two kingdoms, and these two kings. "So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south," that's the king of the south's territory, "shall not withstand, neither his, king of the south, chosen people, his mighty Praetorian guards, neither shall there be any strength to withstand him." To withstand meaning withstand the king of the north. "But he, the king of the south," "he that cometh against him shall do according to his will." And I made a terrible blunder here in verse 16. I'm just noticing, "But he, the king of the north," who is the one on the conquest here, "that cometh against him, the king of the south, shall do according to his own will." His, king of the north. The king of the south and king of the north in that first part of 16 is transposed. And let me just, this should say king of the north. Let me correct it here. This is the king of the north. And here, this one's the king of the south. That was transposed, and thankfully we can show it, at least in this recorded feature. Verse 16 again, but he, the king of the north, he's the one who is charging against the king of the south. But he, the king of the north, that cometh against him, the king of the south, shall do according to his, the king of the north's own will. And none shall stand before him, the king of the north. And he, the king of the north, shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. The king of the north is going to conquer the glorious land. Without proof, immediately, the glorious land is a description of the Holy Land, the Promised Land. So we saw from north to south to the glorious land, or the pleasant land, and that's the land of Canaan. Just remember, the land of Palestine. So the king of the north won Palestine. Then we're going to see that he's going to win it again in 41 now. 41, he, the king of the north, he shall enter also into the glorious land. That's the second time. And many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his, the king of the north's hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. So we see that the king of the north, if he is to enter the glorious land again, it means that he's lost it at least once. And so in order to win it again, he's going to control it twice. That means the king of the south took it from him at least once. As we saw way back in the early days, the king of the north took control of the glorious land. And in the end of time, he's to take control of the glorious land again. That means he lost it at least once. This much should be very clear. And if that's clear, it sets us in a pace to not mangle and wrangle the scriptures. It is a unified book. This is the angel speaking to Daniel. But what some theologians have done, they came to verse 40 and they say, listen guys, we are no longer going to follow this geographic guideline. We've had enough of geography. Throw away the geography. These lands, these names, these territories no longer have any geographic significance on earth. It's all spiritual. Well, I didn't say that. Let me bring up what the church says, if I can find it really quickly here. And I'm going to bring that over to my screen here. Bring it over to the screen, that you can see what the Sabbath School Quarterly actually says. Will light up in a minute. Okay, that's lesson 10. So let me go forward to lesson 11. And it really should be in lesson 12. So I had to go back because someone had asked a question about lesson 10. And I wanted to ensure that I wasn't misstating what the lesson said. So it's scrolling now. I have many screens open, that's why it's running a little slower than normal, but it will light up. So here, from north to south to the beautiful land. You notice they have a beautiful land here, very nice picture. If that were in color, it would look more glorious. Okay. So when the brethren, and let me just do this here, Palestine. Okay. Jerusalem. Okay, so here. So on Tuesday's lesson, look at this is so very telling. Look at what the brethren have, and you'll see what they did. So I'm highlighting what I'm going to read. A transition in power from the Hellenistic kings to pagan Rome seems to be depicted in 11:16. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. Then they commented, the glorious land is Jerusalem, an area where ancient Israel had existed. And the new power that takes over that area is pagan Rome. They were correct. This is a correct statement. But look at what the brethren have done after telling us that the glorious land is Jerusalem. Earthly Jerusalem by that. They came to Thursday's lesson now. And says here, after the promised land. So, picking up from here. Just appreciate how people lead themselves astray. Says, the glorious holy mountain. In Old Testament times, this expression referred to Zion, the capital and heart of Israel, and geographically located in the promised land. That is correct. Watch how they mislead themselves. After the cross, God's people are no longer defined along ethnic and geographical lines. Therefore, the holy mountain must be a symbolic designation of God's people spread throughout the world. You've lost your way. Then they went, so perhaps we can interpret events like this. You see that word perhaps? They're grasping at thin air. One, the king of the south attacks the king of the north. The French Revolution attempted to eradicate religion and defeat the papacy. And on it goes. They have lost their way. They've taken it out of Jerusalem and now put it in Europe and other places and are hoping to find the light. You cannot find the light. You throw away the candle. You throw away your flashlight and you're trying to find your way, stumbling in darkness. It's disappointing to see that, but it's true. I just thought it would be helpful for you to see, how dense darkness is when we throw away the key. The king of the north occupies a glorious land. And if we understand that, then it won't trouble us to go to the rest of the Bible and see what it actually has to say. I think this is a very good commentary here that I should read into the record. Victor Huddeff in his tract number 12, page 62 and 63, he says, the simple and positive way not to lose sight of the identity of these two kings is to let the pen of prophecy trace on the map of history the successive rulers of Egypt and Palestine. For the titles of the kings who conquered and who lost these ancient countries are chronicled in this prophetic chapter to preserve the identity and to expose the evil intents of both the kings of the south and the king of the north. Remember now, to begin with, the king of the south rules the glorious land Palestine along with Egypt, and the king of the north takes the glorious land twice. If he takes it twice, then he must have lost it once. Consequently, both kings ruled it twice and lost it twice. But the king of the north, the last to rule it, rules it in the time of the end, the time many run to and fro, and the time knowledge has increased, according to Daniel 12:4, in our time. Mark this carefully, for these transactions of the land provide the key to the identity of these kings from the time of Alexander's death to our time. This was written in 1941, and it's still true today. And I think I read this from the lesson. Yeah, and that's a very enlightening statement from the Sabbath School Quarterly. And you'll see, all I did was to insert the word King of the North and King of the South for amplification. But it says under Monday's lesson, most Bible students understand the wars between the King of the North and the King of the South prophesied in Daniel 11:15, 5-14, as referring to the many battles involving these two dynasties, the King of the North and King of the South. According to the prophecy, an attempt would be made to unite these two dynasties by marriage. We covered that earlier. But that alliance would be short-lived. Historical sources inform us that Antiochus II, or Theos, grandson to Seleucus I, married Bernice, a daughter of the Egyptian king Ptolemy II, or Philadelphus. However, that agreement did not last, and the conflict that directly involved the people of God soon resumed. Thus, Daniel 11 deals with some important events that will touch the lives of God's people during the centuries after the prophet of Daniel passes from the scene. And that's still true today. We still, therefore, need to understand who is the King of the North and King of the South. And unless we have not thrown away the key of knowledge, we will be right on track, because we have the more sure word of prophecy. I wanted to jump ahead because there's some exciting things. I wanted to show you where slavery and all of these things are mentioned. But the lesson, it is impossible to go through Daniel 11 in a one-week discussion and study, and then to present it in a Sabbath school. There's no participation. How are you going to cover 45 verses in 45 minutes? That's not even practical. And all right, this is Monday's lesson. I'm going to skip over this reading just because of time, not because I don't want to discuss it. Oh my, that was a reading of chapter 11, 15 through 20. And maybe we should read. Yeah, oh no, we can't afford not to read this. This is must read. This is must read. This is where Lady Cleopatra comes into the chain of prophecy. And so this black queen, recently she became very famous in modern media. They have uncovered and all sorts of history regarding her. And she was from, her dad, she's from a Greek lineage, but she grew up in Egypt under the Ptolemaic dynasty. Remember, Ptolemy was one of the Greek divisions. Ptolemy was one of the 4 divisions of Greece, the Grecian Empire. So she was about the 15th in line when she took on the throne down there in Egypt and ruled. So here's a beautiful pageantry, if you will. She was such a romantic queen that she had to herself 2 Roman leaders, Caesar Augustus, why is his name Augustus, and then Mark Antony. So let's read about this romance and also intrigue. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount, and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him, the king of the south, that is, but he, the king of the south, that cometh against him, the king of the north, shall do according as his own will. That means the king of the south is going to have the upper hand. And none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land. Here the king of the south is going to take the glorious land from the king of the north. I'm sorry. Right. So, okay. So he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. We read this earlier. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women. The daughter of women, remember that phrase. corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. After this shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land. Fort is like a military fortress. That's what fort for fortification. He shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall. He make a terrible military strategic blunder. He shall stumble and fall and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom. But within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. He'll come to his end. So I'll just put my little summary here, my little note summary here that I wrote, because there's a lot of history, and since there's a lot of history, I just want to show you how Caesar Augustus, Mark Antony, and Cleopatra, and we're not going to take all the minuscule details because we'll be here all afternoon. I noted here the daughter of women, Queen Cleopatra, is known throughout history as an insatiably beautiful woman. She was the lady's lady, the queen of voluptuous pageantry and romance, charming the hearts of the king and a great ruler in Rome. In the first triumvirate, she was wedded to Julius Caesar. After his assassination, you remember the assassination of Julius Caesar Augustus, from which we get July and August. After his assassination, Cleopatra was wedded to Mark Antony, his successor, Octavianus Augustus Caesar's rival. So in the fullness of time, though, at the battle known as the Battle of Actium, Mark Antony, that's when they were fighting with the Battle of Actium, is where the Ptolemy dynasty was fighting against the Roman army at Actium and lost. In the middle of this war, Mark Antony committed suicide. They saw that his forces were just being wasted in front of his eyes. And Cleopatra, she jumped in a boat and headed south to Egypt. Went down to Cairo, and she put a viper, one of those Egyptian snakes, upon her breast. And he bit her, and she died from the snake bite. So she committed suicide as well. The Bible did say that, he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her. So this is the intrigue that Cleopatra, the southern queen, was wedded to Julius Caesar, the northern king. In a corrupting way, this was to create a sort of alliance, but it didn't work. Didn't work. And we know what happened to Julius Caesar. They stabbed him to death. His own people killed him. They murdered him. And Shakespeare wrote a very famous play about him, Julius Caesar. It's a required reading for most high school and college students in literature. So here, that required reading is a part of the story that we're studying, the prophecy that we're studying here. How when Julius Caesar's hence, or Flavius, all these characters, hence home, ye adult creatures, get you home. It's a holiday. What mean ye adult creatures ought to play? And Mark Antony, fly further off, my lord, fly further off. I mean, run away, they're coming to kill you. And then when he solemnly eulogized Caesar, he said Brutus was an honorable man. An honorable man was Brutus, a very dishonorable man, but he used it, in a very condescending manner. Brutus is an honorable man. He stabbed his master. That was a stab that killed Caesar. The 40th stab, they knifed him. 39 stabs. The 40th one took him out. That's Brutus. All right. So In time, the Battle of Actium, Mark Antony, sensing defeat, committed suicide, and Cleopatra abandoned her navy and retreated to Egypt, where she also committed suicide. Having lost the battle with Rome at Actium, the king of the south was left to heal his wound. It was this battle, the Battle of Actium, that placed Rome on the map as the triumphant king of the north. Remember in Daniel chapter 8, it said, out of one of them shall come forth a little horn that waxed great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. Here prophecy meets history. That out of the king of the south, the Ptolemy dynasty, Rome gained the ascendancy of the kingdom. History and prophecy unite. And prophecy actually clarifies history. That Rome is not just a sporadic power, but how Rome came into power was through the south, just with such precision that one need not err if we rightly divide the word of truth. So having lost Rome to the battle, the king of the south, lost, and he came from the north. Rome was now the sovereign, the imperial kingdom of Rome. Having conquered the territories both north and south of the Holy Land, Rome for a while wore both titles of king of the north and king of the south. And Rome was a superpower nation. No enemies around. She ruled the world. And as such, she could now command that the whole world should be taxed. What a taxation! What a moment in time! And that moment was when Christ was born. This is what the prophecy is dictating to us. I read that in verse 20. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, when the kingdom was at its might. It conquered the north, it conquered the south, and now Rome is a superpower, the only superpower of its class. When in the glory of the kingdom, but within, read that again. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes. That's Caesar Augustus. You read about it in Luke chapter 2. In Caesar Augustus, it came to pass when Caesar Augustus said all the world was to be taxed. The whole world was to be taxed in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. This is not Julius Caesar who was destroyed in anger and they knifed him. This is Octavianus Julius Caesar, or Octavianus Augustus. Now Julius Caesar was called the Maximus Pontificus. In fact, that was the highest title that could be given to an earthly monarch. The word Augustus means the high and exalted one. I'm not high and exalted, pardon me. I just happen to have that name. But the Augustus is a title. It's not even a name. It's a title, like you would say, president. Augustus means that you have reached the zenith of monarchical authority. There's no earthly potentate that could come in front of Augustus. And so he ruled the world. That title, Maximus Julius Caesar Augustus, or Maximus Pontificus, means the highest pontiff or the highest priest, would later be transferred directly to Papal Rome. From pagan Rome, and the religion of pagan Rome would be altered to fit in a Christian context, but with the same pagan trappings. The Bible is so concise, so consistent, so clear. Yeah, so I have lots of notes here, but for the purpose of our discussion, are there any comments or questions? This is a very pivotal point because we have come now to the dividing line between Old Testament and New Testament. With verse 20, the raiser of taxes brings us right now in the New Testament era. All right, having heard none. In Eastern's Bible Dictionary, it says here, for Augustus, the cognomen of the first Roman Emperor Claudius Julius Caesar Octavianus, during whose reign Christ was born. Luke 2 verse 1. His decree that all the world should be taxed was a divinely ordered occasion of Jesus' being born. Before his death in AD 14, he associated Tiberius with him in the empire, by whom he was succeeded. So this Octavianus Julius Caesar, or Claudius Julius Caesar Octavianus, he died a natural death, not a violent death like Julius Caesar, his predecessor. So God wanted us to know which of these Caesars we're talking about. Not the one that they stabbed, but the one that died a natural death. Not Pontificus Maximus. Of course, all the Caesars after that were Pontifex Maximus, or Maximus Pontifex. Pontifex Maximus, chief pope, high priest, whichever way it is described, it means the same thing. The chief priest of the the Roman pantheon. So even the Bible Dictionary supports what we have discovered from history here. Now, and here's a statement I was just referring to, and this is from a website called formerthings.com, historical notations of ancient Rome. Augustus was convinced that belief in the old gods, and remember this because we're going to see way down in verse 32 and following. Augustus was convinced that belief in the old gods had made Rome great, so he set out to encourage his subjects to return to the worship of these gods, the pantheon of Rome. He rostered 82 temples, rather he restored 82 temples in Rome alone. He became the Pontifex Maximus, or highest priest, in the state cult. So the religion of Rome has been a pagan religion, pure and simple, a heathenic pagan religion. The title Pontifex Maximus would later be worn by the Roman Catholic Pope, including the current one, Francis. Just remember that. But now, the head of the pagan cult is now the public face of the Christian church, referred to as the Holy Father, Pontifex Maximus. We shall have more to say about him. Prophecy has much to say about him. In fact, in the New World Encyclopedia, it went on to say, the Pontifex Maximus, which literally means greatest pontiff, was a high priest of the ancient Roman College of Pontiffs. This was the most important position in the ancient Roman religion, open only to patriarchs until 254 BC. The title of Pontifex Maximus was eventually adopted by the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. The terms Pontifex Maximus and Summus Pontifex were for centuries used by the Bishop of Rome, also known as the Pope. After Christ himself, the Pope is considered to be the highest priest, the veritable meaning of Summus Pontifex and Pontifex Maximus. Prophecy runs with a straight line, and it takes us inside the dark closets of secret places and unveils the truth. Here we are seeing it naked before the eye, how the Roman Catholic Church came to ascendancy, and that which we call the Pope of Rome, the Pontiff, that's a short title for him, the abbreviated title, the Pontiff. It's the same Pontifex Maximus, the head of the same pagan religion. It's just masqueraded under Christian garb. And we will see how prophecy shows how that shift would be made. by stealth, by intrigue, by subterfuge. Here's verse 21 now, Daniel 11. And in his estate, in the estate of pagan Rome, in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Now the church, the Sabbath School Quarterly, thinks that this vile person is Tiberius. They are highly mistaken. Tiberius is a small fish in this regard. God has already spoken about the pagan Roman Empire. And it is sufficient, the high points, sufficient high points is to introduce the king that would be alive when the Messiah was born, because he would be the raiser of taxes. So now in his estate, in the estate of the Caesars, this is what we're looking on, in the estate of the Roman Caesars, another king should arise called a vile person. This is where the Roman Catholic papacy comes into play. A vile, corrupt, wretched system that has taken over the kingdom through peaceful means. He shall come in peaceably, by stealth, decoy, wolf in sheep's clothing, obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Fair speeches, smooth promises, and flatter this way. You know, when the Pope speaks, you have to take off put on your hearing aids. You must be perfectly silent. Oh, look at when he came and spoke to Congress. It's almost just a little above a whisper. You have to be really quiet. If there's a shuffle in the room, you can't hear the Pope speaking. You never hear a Pope raising his voice. It's a part of the stealth and the trickery. The peaceful appeal. The man of peace. Just pull up any video on the Pope, any of the popes, and you see, my beloved brethren, my brothers and sisters, it's a very subdued voice. Very subdued. Not like a presidential voice where a president is giving a campaign speech. No matter how important the speech, the Pope always has a very subdued voice. Flatteries. Appearance of peace. Decoy. Playing with our minds. You have to give reverence to hear the Pope speak. They cannot be a shuffle or a rustle, otherwise you won't hear word from him. And that's a part of it. You're giving obeisance to that system. In Daniel chapter 8, the true history of this peaceful appearing interloper is uncovered. This vile person is uncovered. Watch it now in Daniel 8 from verse 23. And in the latter time of their kingdom, meaning the kingdom of the four Grecian powers, and we came to the latter time when the Ptolemies lost the kingdom to the Romans. In the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, the transgressors are the Jewish people who were given 490 years of probationary time, and that was coming up by 34 AD. That was a full stop. In the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance, that's a vile person, and understanding dark sentences, shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper, and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft, deceptions, by disguises. He shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. That's how the Jesuits operate. Crafty, disguise, stealth. And he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace, peaceably, through stealth, intrigue, and subterfuge. And he shall magnify himself, and by peace shall destroy many. he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. This is a vile person of prophecy. It's not Tiberius. The vile person is a Roman Catholic pontiff. So I wanted to go back to the Sabbath School Quarterly so that you get the updates here. And Tiberius, let me find him here. So here, Daniel 11:21. This is Tuesday's lesson. The Quarterly says, some additional clues in the biblical text reinforce this perception. For example, the one who imposes taxes must refer to Caesar Augustus. Correct? It is during his reign that Jesus is born, as Mary and Joseph traveled to Bethlehem for the census. Daniel 11:20. Correct again. Also, according to the prophecy, this ruler will be succeeded by a vile person. This is where they run off the track. As history shows, Augustus was succeeded by Tiberius, an adoptive son of Augustus. Tiberius is known to have been an eccentric and vile person. That's not what the prophecy is showing. Tiberius actually kind of became very mentally unstable toward the end of his reign, and because of his mental instability, did some very outlandish things. Killed people and so on that were close to him. But by no means doesn't meet the scope of prophecy for a vile person who would waste the church of God. By no means. So it goes on. Most important, according to the biblical text, it was during the reign of Tiberius that the Prince of the Covenant would be broken. And it went on, quoting from Daniel 9. So I brought this out to show that it's taking prophecy in a different direction. It is good and okay to exalt Christ, and we can mention him all the time throughout the Bible studies. But we need to be sure that we're rightly dividing the word of truth. Not every time we just say Jesus, it means that that's what God is saying just because it sounds good. We need to understand what the message of salvation is. God is pointing to us that this vile person is the Roman Catholic papacy that is going to stampede the church of God. You know, today there are many Christians around the world. They're looking for the man of sin, called the Antichrist, in quotes. They're looking around. Oh, the Antichrist is coming. And they're all bowing down before the Pope and looking for the man of sin. I heard Jeremiah Davis recently on the radio talking about this man of sin who is going to come. Quotes Daniel 7:25 and other places. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And these are the same people who are hugging up the Pope. They're blind. They can't see. So when we see the vile person and say, oh no, that's Tiberius Caesar. It's just like the Sunday keepers. They're hugging up the Pope and they're looking for the man of sin. So, just to be clear, we need to be consistent with the Word of God. And of course, it did not come by the will of man, but holy men of God spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. I really want to get to a certain point before we pause here. Are there any comments, thoughts, questions, remarks out there? I left the lines open just for that reason, that we can engage. So if you don't have anything to say, I have a lot that could be said. But I don't want to bore you just with my voice, but if the information is concise and we keep pressing on. Actually, and I perhaps will forego this, but it's important enough to recognize that even Sister White noted that we should take time out for the books of Daniel and the Revelation. And here, I discussed the vile person up in that paragraph, but from Ellen White, Testaments and Ministers 1:16, she says, those who eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of God will bring from the books of Daniel and Revelation. Somebody's line is open. Did you have something to say? If you're not going to speak, then just close. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
So in Daniel...
Yeah, there are two lines
12.
open. Yeah, you're getting a feedback there. That's why.
Okay. So in Daniel chapter 12, verse 11, and then also in Daniel 11, chapter 11, verse 33. So in chapter 11, verse 33, then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. What is the abomination that causes desolation?
I'm actually getting there. It's a very good question. I'll be there in about 7 minutes or so. The abomination that causes desolation, don't forget that. Our church says that it's paganism, and we're going to see that what it really is. From the biblical standpoint, the Bible, again, must be the final authority. But so that question is out there, and we're going to address it. And so Sister White was clear when she says, we need to eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of God, which will bring from the books of Daniel and Revelation truth that is inspired by the Holy Spirit. They will start into action forces that cannot be repressed. The lips of children will be open to proclaim the mysteries that have been hidden from the minds of men. There are mysteries in here, and we've just uncovered mysteries that are hidden from the trained theologians. You know, there are over 50 PhDs who comb over the Sabbath school lesson before it comes down to us. 50, minimum. But God said, the lips of children will be open to proclaim the mysteries that have been hidden from the minds of men. These are learned men. She went on, study Revelation in connection with Daniel, for history will be repeated. We, with all our religious advantages, ought to know far more today than we do now. We ought to know far more. There's a lot of truth, a lot of present truth, a lot of timely messages in these books of Daniel and Revelation that have been combed over by others and given a certain disposition. But we ought not to be the reflectors of men's thoughts. Just because some, famous person made the statement doesn't necessitate that it's a truthful statement. So, and I ask people to keep me honest by checking up the details. That's why I provide primary evidence on the screen. Primary evidence, not suppositions. Primary evidence. In verse 22, Daniel 11:22, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. So two people will be broken. So it says, with the arms of a flood, that means a very large army, shall they, the enemies of the king of the north, be overflown before him. I'm sorry. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown before him. Yes. And shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. So, and this word enemies should really be armies. I don't know how. This word armies should also go right here. That's how it's designed. So the king of the north is going to lose a battle. This is what this verse is saying. With the arms of a flood, fortified armies, shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. In the International Standard Version, it says a little stronger. It says, overwhelming forces will be carried away before him, along with the commander-in-chief of the covenant. So the king of the north will be broken, but the king of the north also will cause the prince of the covenant to be broken. And this is where the cutting off of Messiah, the prince, is mentioned, where Christ should be broken by the pagan Roman Empire. He would be crucified. And Daniel 9:26 says, after 62 weeks, remember we talked about the time of the transgressors coming to their full, after 62 weeks, or really the 69th week, because 7 weeks had already been apportioned off, so 7 weeks plus 62 weeks makes 69 weeks, and in the middle of the 70th week, now it says, after, not during, but after 62 weeks, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So after 62 weeks, and when we studied chapter 9 2 weeks ago, it shows that this was after the end of 69 weeks, which is the 70th week. In the midst of the 70th week, in the midst of the week, Messiah was to be cut off. That means he would be crucified. And so the same power that raised taxes also broke the Prince of the Covenant. The Prince of the Covenant is Christ himself. Yeah, just to show the breaking of the empire then, that the empire should be broken and his armies would be defeated. A little ancient history, it's ancient EU from European Union, says when Emperor Diocletian came to power in the late 3rd century CE, Common Era, he divided the empire into a treachery with one capital, Rome, in the west, and another, Nicomedia, in the east. Over time, the city of Rome fell into disarray and susceptible to invasion, eventually falling in 476 BC. The province of Egypt remained part of the Roman Byzantine Empire until the 7th century when it came under Arab control. Very important to see that the Arab, the Muslim, the Islamic, the Mohammedan people took over now. So the true battlefronts are again drawn between the king of the north and the king of the south. I said before that the king of the north, or Rome, had assumed both prophetic titles for over 400 years. When they defeated when they defeated the king of the south, the Ptolemies, at the Battle of Actium, they no longer had an enemy state. Rome ruled the world. And so it was not until after Diocletian divided the kingdom that it now paved the way for the king of the south to wake up and gain ascendancy once more. And we hear about the Crusades. This is what it's talking about here. This is what gave birth to the Crusades, out of the king of the north and the king of the south fighting. The title king of the north was transferred from pagan Rome after 476 over to Papal Rome without a hitch. All that happened is that Papal Rome changed the god of her fathers, and it was no longer the god of the pantheon of Rome, but she took on the title of a Christian god. Very interesting. And this is where we're almost there where the brother asked a question. So now we're in 11 from 25 going on. And I'm going to, rather than reading it twice, yes, go ahead.
Before you, I just wanted to make sure, are you saying the Axum people, like the people that lived in, I want to say Africa at the time, that Caesar Augustus defeated that group of people?
Yes.
Okay.
No,
I was just trying to
the people that he defeated were the Egyptian military at the Battle of Actium. They met in Actium to fight the war, where the king of the south squared off against the king of the north, and the king of the north just swallowed him up, which is Rome. The Roman army swallowed up the battle forces of the Egyptians, who were the title king of the south at that time. And so in conquering all of Seleucus' dynasty, and now Ptolemy's dynasty, Rome took over the entire world. And this is why you'll see that the strength of the iron in Daniel chapter 2, the strength of the iron goes all the way down to our times. In the image of the beast, the image, with gold, silver, brass, iron, and clay. The iron is a symbol of Rome, and all the way down to the toes, the strength of the iron was still in the kingdom. So even in our world today, we still have the strength, the effects of Rome. That's why you see Congress, the parliamentary system that we have, that's the Roman system. You go to Washington, D.C., and you see Rome all over it. It's all of Rome. The Senate, the Congress, that's Rome. That's all the order of Rome that we're seeing right now. The whole system is a Roman system. So we say we live in a Greco-Roman world, because while that is a Roman system, it's a Greek system. All the science, the mathematics, the engineering, everything else is Greek. Any of you who have studied medicine or in the medical field or mathematics, science, engineering, and such, it goes back to the days of Plato and Aristotle and the other thinkers out of Greece. And we still have that. In a previous study, I covered this extensively to show why the Bible says that the third kingdom of brass would be a rule over all the earth. So it is said that Rome conquered Greece militarily, but Greece conquered Rome socially or politically, because Greece became intestine to the Roman kingdom. The Olympics, we still have the Olympics today. That's a Greek derivation. All of these special, almost everything in athletics today in the sporting industry, it's a Greek culture. So we call it the Greco-Roman world in which we live today. So here, are there any other clarifying points that we need? All right, so here now, we're moving one step farther in chapter 11, 25 down to 30, interspersed. And I'm going to make a little commentary as we go through for the interest of time. And he, speaking of the king of the north, he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. The king of the north squaring off against the king of the south. But the king of the north shall not stand. He's going to be defeated. The king of the north shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices for him. They're going to set a trap for him. Yea, they, the allies of the king, they that feed on the portion of the king's meat shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. Now, the king of the north now took on the title of the papacy. As I said earlier, we saw the vile king, and those that were with him, his allies, would turn against him. They shall destroy him. And in Revelation 13, verse 3, we read about that the head would develop a deadly wound. The seven-headed beast, the leopard-like beast, would have a deadly wound. So the deadly wound comes as a result of the impact of the Protestant Reformation, which we're going to see very shortly. And we're going to see that it is not Berthier who injured the system with that mortal wound. It's the word of God. It says it here, verse 26, yea, they that feed on the portion of his meat, his doctrine, his false doctrines, shall destroy him. These are the apostate Protestants who now became Protestants, or the Christians who had apostatized and then became, reformed during the Reformation, got their senses, their wits about them, and said, wait a minute, we're going down Satan's tube here. We need to jump ship right now. They jumped ship, and they put a very strong protest against Rome, and it is known today as a Protestant Reformation. Of course, that also suffered a mortal wound only 3 years ago. We'll talk about that shortly. Verse 26, yea, they, the king's allies, that feed on the portion of the king's meat, shall destroy him, shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. 28, then shall he return, the king of the north shall return into his land with great riches. Now pause. How could you, it says here, the king of the south shall be stirred up in battle, with a very great and mighty army. And the king of the north shall not stand before him. So how then can he leave this battle with great wealth? How is that possible for the king of the south, the king of the north, to be defeated militarily and walking home with booty? Clearly the booty is not coming from war, but from other means. Look in 28 again. Then, speaking of after he's been defeated, then shall he, the king of the north, return to his land with great riches, not just with a little wealth, dropping down wealth, great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land. So we see how he obtained his great wealth. His wealth came from the church. This is bringing in the doctrine of antinomianism. Nomos means law. Nomos is law. So antinomos means against law. A spirit of lawlessness or a system of lawlessness would be introduced. A theology of lawlessness would be introduced. The covenant is God's holy law. His Torah is his covenant. So we see that this power, known as the King of the North, would be antinomian, anti-law. The Bible speaks about the lawless one in Thessalonians. So antinomianism is here projected. 28 again. Then shall he, the King of the North, return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant. He now finds the church a place of attractive repose. But there's something in there that doesn't meet his fancy. The holy covenant. God's holy law. It is in these days, we're going to see very quickly, how the entire calendar of the church was changed. The entire worship calendar. And why some people will be going in church tomorrow morning and thinking that they're observing the Lord's Sabbath. It's out of this very situation that we're reading here. Verse 29. At the time appointed, notice that phrase, time appointed or appointed time. It means the moed. It's a special festival, a worship season. It's all throughout the Bible. At the at the appointed time, it's not just being, is some designation. It means the appointed time, the set time, the time of God's special appointment with his people. At the time appointed, he, the King of the North, shall come toward the south. But it shall not be as the former, as at the latter. For the ships of Shittim, or really Kittim, the ships of Kittim, the CH pronounces K, the ships of Kittim shall come against him, the King of the North. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he, the King of the North, do. He shall even return and have intelligence, notice that word, with them that forsake the holy covenant. This is how he gained his wealth. He formed an alliance with those who forsook the law of God. Who could they be? Are they the Jewish people? No. Are they the Christians who turned around and at the great falling away and give up God's holy covenant? And yes, it is the Christians. What did Rome do? What did Rome give them for this? Well, under Diocletian and other Roman overlords, there was heavy persecution against the church. One paid a great price to wear the name of Christianity. And I hear someone, is there a question or a comment coming up? Someone scraping their throat like they were ready? Okay, when you're ready, just let me know. So here, under Diocletian and many other of the terrible Roman monsters, leaders, they wasted the Christian. And it was so oppressive that, terrible bloodshed. And we saw that what he was going to do. He was going to come with a vengeance against the church. And this is when Constantine, in about 313, he came into power. And he said, wait a minute. We're not going to persecute them anymore. We will declare Christianity the state religion and a protected religion. And in exchange for peaceful existence and the removal of the terrors of the torture chambers and persecution, the church gave its doctrinal platform over to the state of Rome. That was the very worst thing that happened to Christianity. When the persecutions ended. The persecutions caused Christianity to implode. The Apostle Paul talks about the great falling away would come. And that's what we're looking on. The great falling away came when Rome traded peace for, or traded persecution for, or peace for persecution, or protection from persecution to peaceful existence, or for peaceful existence. And that's what happened. Rather than suffering the fires of persecution, the church conceded to a peaceful existence in Rome. And so now, Rome gained intelligence against those who forsook the Holy Covenant. Now that word intelligence is so very powerful, because when you think of the intelligence department, the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, you understand that the word intelligence doesn't mean that you're studying academics necessarily, but you're gathering secrets, you're gathering information. So it says that in 30 it says, he shall have indignation against the Holy Covenant. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the Holy Covenant. This is how the Jesuit system operates. You gather intelligence. Do you know the most intelligent system on earth? It's not the Chinese. It's the Roman Catholic Church. There's every church in every country, just about. And they're gathering intelligence. You think they're there doing worship services. They know the inner workings of every government on earth. They have gathered intelligence. And so when we talk about inquisition, the word inquisition comes from inquiry and inquest. You're inquiring, eavesdropping, gathering intelligence. That's what we're seeing. There's a whole lot said here, and I'll just take it from my notes. It says, actually, we'll just pass on this slide here. If there are any comments, or suffice it to say, those of indignation against the Holy Covenant, this is where the antinomian feeling came in, where lawlessness took the place of the law of God, and the Sabbath was exchanged for Sunday, and all the other worship rites. And I'm going to show that shortly, how the other worship rites were removed from the Christian church. Just as a little backdrop here to show where the Mohammedans came into the picture, here in the New Student's Reference Book, it says the Western incursion of the Mohammedans began in 639 AD when they invaded the country, and Egypt became a Mohammedan province. So Egypt, where the king of the south was, became a Mohammedan province. And until today, 90% of Egyptians are Muslims, until this very moment. Almost 10% of are Coptic Christians, which are really Eastern Roman Catholics. Okay. Victor Hudef, he spoke about this. It says in his tract 12, page 707, thus following the Ptolemies, the Mohammedans, whose rule was the second southern regime, came into the title King of the South. Notice now, the Muslims, the Islamic people, took on the title King of the South. By 814 AD, Rome, the king of the north, had already ceded Egypt and Palestine to the Mohammedans, to the king of the south. Conscience, and this is a very powerful, conscience-dominating Christianity, which is Roman Catholicism. Conscience-dominating Christianity, I should have placed it, and when I edit this, I'll put Roman Catholic in the parentheses. Conscience-dominating Christianity from the north, and conscience-dominating Mohammedanism from the south have ever since been in territorial and religious conflict. And whichever one took a slice of the other's dominion, he forced upon penalty of death for nonconformity his religious beliefs upon his captives. What is ISIS and Islamic Jihad and other people with Sharia law doing right now? They're forcing down the throats of the people who are in their territories. Sharia law, you must be a Muslim or die. So conscience dominating these are the two tails of the same firebrand. Roman Catholicism and Mohammedanism, or Islam, are twins in so many ways. You even see they have nuns the same. Their priests dress similarly. They have beads, rosaries. They do everything. They are of the same ilk. Conscience dominating Christianity, called Roman Catholicism, and conscience dominating Mohammedanism, called Islam. The one is from the southern, king of the south, or the Catholic is the king of the north, while the other, Mohammedan, is king of the south. They have ever since had territorial conflicts. And those territorial conflicts, we know them as the Crusades. It was always about one little place, Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Way down, look here, 814 AD. The Adventist says after 34 AD, there was no more discussion about Jerusalem. Not true. That's not true. Now, the powerful part, verse 27, which we didn't bring into play until now. Both these kings, speaking of the king of the north, king of the south, both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, evil, and they shall speak lies at one table. But it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the appointed time. You notice that phrase again, the appointed time. God is very determined about that. There's some truth he wants us to know about his appointed time. And the end of all this is at the appointed time. Both these kings, the king of the north and king of the south, are going to speak lies at one table. They speak lies by taking possession. Remember, there was a seesaw, back and forth. They're taking your territory, I take their territory, and back and forth. And whichever one comes under the governance of the other, you've got to honor the God that I worship at the tip of the sword. Victor Houteff made it so succinct on page 78 of his tract number 12 when he says, the one table at which both kings speak is, of course, figurative. That is, ecclesiastical Rome declared to their captives that the Roman religion was foreshadowed by the angel Gabriel's announcement to Mary that she was to bear a son, the Savior of the world. Likewise, Mohammedanism next declared the same people, to the same people, meaning at the same table, when they became their captives, that the angel Gabriel appeared to Muhammad and gave him the religion which all the people of earth must have. The angel Gabriel strangely appeared in both cases. The king of the north story has the angel Gabriel, and the king of the south story has the angel Gabriel. What is one to do? But the Bible says they spoke lies. Whatever the story they mention about the angel Gabriel, they're both lies. Think about that. Conscience dominating Christianity from the north, Roman Catholicism, lied about what Gabriel said. And conscience dominating Islam from the south also lied about what Gabriel said. God, prophecy tells us that these religions are lies. That's prophecy. These are lying spirits. Houteff would conclude on page 78 with these words. Though Rome's declaration as to just what Gabriel said to Mary is founded in fact, Rome's actual religion, merely coated with Christianity, was not the religion of the one whose birth Gabriel forespoke. As to Muhammad's receiving his religion from Gabriel, the answer is simple. He never did. Thus, both the Mohammedanized pashas and the Christianized lords or popes were speaking lies at one table, the people's. But these shall not prosper, declared the angel, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. That is, their false religions will come to an end at an appointed time. they will not endure forever. When is this appointed time when these two false religions will come crashing down? This appointed time, my friends, is at the loud cry of the third angel's message, the antitypical Pentecost, the appointed time for today, when God will be calling all his children out of Babylon and into the pre-Advent kingdom of his glory and his grace, as foretold in Revelation 18, verse 1 through 5, where it says, "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins and you receive not of her plagues." It's not just Roman Catholicism. Islam and Roman Catholicism takes more than half the world's population right now. God has a lot of people there to be rescued, to be saved at the appointed time. The appointed time. If we don't understand God's calendar, we're out of sequence with his timing. All things must be done in his season, in his appointed time. I think I'm coming up to answering that question now that the brother asked earlier. And almost. Yeah, we need to dwell just in this one verse, verse 28, just a little, and then we go up to verse 32. It says, "Then shall he," speaking of the king of the north, "then shall he return into his land with great riches. His heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land." And here, the holy covenant, Hadif described here, seeing the necessity of compromising with the heathen in order to make an easy prey of them, the king of the north therefore set his heart against the holy covenant. He gave Daniel 11 and other places. That is, he dropped from the Christian's creed the Sabbath of creation, and we'll see that he did a little more than that. He dropped from the Christian's creed the Sabbath of creation, which the Lord blessed and hallowed as memorial of his works, a perpetual covenant. Now, Rome informed us that they did a little more than just dropping the Sabbath day. Here, in 1905, and I posted this statement in others of my commentaries in a more expanded form, here's the Roman Catholic Church, who T. Enright, the bishop of the St. Alphonsus Church in St. Louis, Missouri, in 1905 he wrote this letter. He's a cardinal. Says here, "The Catholic Church abolished not only the Sabbath, but all the other Jewish festivals." Think about that. When he set his heart against the Holy Covenant, it was not to abolish only the Sabbath, but all the other Jewish festivals. What does that tell you about those appointed times today? Those who tell us that they were nailed to the cross when Jesus died, that's one of the lies that Rome gave us to repeat. That's one of the lies at the common table that Rome gave us to repeat. There are many lies. Jesus was born on December 25th. Another lie. He died at Easter. Another lie. And the Lent and all the other things that go in between. These are all lies. All lies. God is calling a people out of darkness into his marvelous light. Not Rome's marvelous lies. In my notes I say here, since the king of the north was defeated yet returned into his land with great riches, demonstrates that he obtained his wealth through other means than from the booty of war. For in that war from which he made a retreat, he was roundly defeated. Therefore, his wealth came from others, whom, through trickery, he was able to court into his parlor, speaking of the Christians. And who were they but the Christian leaders of the early Middle Ages, whose doctrinal and spiritual compromises paved the way for the man of sin to sit as vicegerent in the Church of God, exposing the entire body of believers, save for the Waldenses, to pay homage to the Roman Catholic papacy. I noted, the king of the north, having intelligence only with those who did forsake the Holy Covenant, clears two important points. First, that all did not forsake the Holy Covenant, only those with whom he had intelligence. All did not forsake the Holy Covenant, inclusive of the Sabbath and the festivals of worship. And second, the same small people with whom he became strong were not the faithful followers of Christ, but the unfaithful ones, those who apostatized from the faith once delivered unto the saints. Therefore, in the blazing light of history, we are now seeing that Rome's vexation against the Holy Covenant was not simply against the Sabbath, but against the entire system of worship, statutes, judgments, and laws given by God to Moses. As we've seen through the testimony of the Cardinal Bishop Enright, the Catholic Church abolished not only the Sabbath, but all the other Jewish festivals. Wow, it's 2 o'clock already. Give me, we're going to have to take a breather shortly here, as this is very taxing. As I said, the church tried to do this in a whole 1-week study. How is this possible? And you get any depth out of it? It's beyond me. I'm cutting corners here, and a lot of corners cutting. And we're just at verse 29. I'm gonna have to skip over this page here just for the interest of time. 29 to 31. Okay, this is important. Can't skip over this one. Since we did 28 already, we're at 29 to 31. Then 11. And at the time appointed, notice that time appointed. This is a very important period. That God reminds us of it so many times throughout these writings. At the time appointed, he, the king of the north, shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter. For the ships of Kittim shall come against him. Therefore he, king of the north, shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the Holy Covenant. And we did this. Just the ships of Kittim shows that we're dealing with. Kittim is the little land of Cyprus today. And it was not just one land, but a group of islands in the Mediterranean, as Jeremiah 2 verse 10 says here. For pass over the isles of Kittim and see and send unto Kedar, and consider diligently and see if there be such a thing. So Kittim is an island chain of nations throughout the Mediterranean. And so these island chains are where the hordes would attack Rome from. These little staging grounds. You hear about, for example, the Hawaiian Islands and the Normandy, when they had not Normandy, there's a Gibraltar, the rock at Gibraltar. These are staging grounds for militaries to do. And you hear about the Aleutian Islands and some other military strongholds. These are little islands in the sea. China is now building islands in the sea, or they know the effectiveness of these little islands. So the Chinese are building islands in the sea, in the Great China Sea. And they're going around to different countries and taking over their ports. And because they're trying to build an international navy. But because we understand prophecy, we can tell how this plays out in the future. So the land of the ships of Kittim are not just from one Cyprus island, but the entire island of the Mediterranean is what we're looking on here. Did I have any special comment in here? Yeah, I mentioned about antinomianism earlier, and it's in my notes, so I'll pass on in the interest of time. Here's a powerful statement regarding antinomianism, where they have indignation against the Holy Covenant. This is so very, very important. This is the same Cardinal, Bishop Enright. Now, this is April 26th of 1902. He wrote this statement when he was in Michigan. Your note was forwarded to me, and he's giving $1,000 and challenging Seventh-day Adventists here too. Watch closely. Your note was forwarded to me where I reside at present. I still offer $1,000 to anyone who can prove to me from the Bible alone that I am bound under pain of grievous sin to keep Sunday holy. We keep Sunday in obedience to the law of the Catholic Church. The church made this law long after the Bible was written. Hence, the law is not in the Bible. I mean, that should settle it. He goes on. The Catholic Church abolished not only the Sabbath, but all the Jewish festivals. That's why I shared with you earlier. Those who deny the authority of the Catholic Church and obey only the Bible must answer correctly the following. Now he's going to point the fingers to us as Adventists. Watch closely. Those who deny the authority of the Catholic Church, answer these questions. 1, where does the Bible teach that we must keep Sunday holy? 2, where does it teach that we must keep Sunday once a week and not once a year like Christmas? 3, where does it teach that we must keep Easter always on the first day after the full moon on the vernal equinox? 4, now this one is for Seventh-day Adventists. 4, in Leviticus 23, you find 7 holy days, binding as strictly as the Sabbath. Where does the Bible say that they were abolished? Hello, Seventh-day Adventists. He concludes, here also you obey the Catholic Church and not the Bible. End of quote. What a powerful challenge. And today there are many of our people who will run you down and say, no, that's a ceremonial law. It's nailed to the cross, done away with. This ceremonial law is another lie that they spoke at the same table. Brethren, don't believe it. God never used the word ceremonial law in the Bible. You'll not find it. Because he didn't divide his law that way. This is how the Roman Catholic Church divided it. And the whole Christian world keeps repeating the same lie. There are many lies we have to take out of our tongue because they were spoken at that common table. We don't have time to decipher, rummage through all of these lies. I think I'm at the point now where the brother asked a question about this power, the power that was to the abomination that maketh desolate. So I'm going to latch verse 32 with verse 24 and other verses. So I'm going to read 24 and 36, 37, 38, 39. Yeah. It says, he, speaking of the king of the north, he shall enter peaceably even upon the fattest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. That means the ancient of days fathers. Who? The early Roman Empire, emperors. Going back to the days of the first Roman emperor was his name Romulus Augustus. Yeah, Romulus Augustus. So here it says he will do something that even goes back to the days of Romulus Augustus. It has never happened. He's going to do something so revolutionary. He will do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. That was 35. 36 now. And the king of the north, that is, shall do according to his will. And he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. That's the appointed time God is reminding us of. 37, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God. For he shall magnify himself above all. That means he's the God above all. Pontifex Maximus. He's God above God. 38, but in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not. This is the thing. He's going to change his religion to a religion of a God his fathers did not know. Notice up here, he's going to do that which his fathers have not done. And that echoes back to this point. the God whom his fathers did not know. Shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, that's a God his fathers didn't know, with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. There's so much said here. I'm going to say it in 2 minutes. He enters peaceably in the land. We covered some of that already. And to take the fattest, the territories, he's taking over the Christian. Yes? He's taking over the Christian church. And he's now going to do that which his fathers have not done. He's going to take on a new religion. He's going to take on the religion of the Christian faith. That's why it says in verse 38, he shall honor the God of forces. That's the God of might. The God of fortresses. A mighty fortress is our God. A bulwark never faileth. He shall honor the God of might. The God whom his fathers did not know. That's a Christian's God. And he's going to honor him with things, with trinkets, silver and gold, which will vanish away, but not with heart surrender to the will and the law of God. He is called the God of forces, the God of might. The Christian's God is called a strange God. And indeed, he's a strange God. He's a strange God to the Roman pantheon, because Yahweh was never worshipped by the Roman pantheon, you see. He's going to worship.
South,
yes?
I'm sorry, are you saying the South is going to take over, are going to go with the God of the North?
No. This is all about the King of the North here. This is showing how the King of the North has morphed from the pagan Roman Empire into the Papal Roman Empire. And as the Papal Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church, is not a Christian institution. It is only honoring the God of the Christians. This is a strange God to him. But this is a God whom his fathers did not acknowledge. You remember, he has the title Pontifex Maximus, the Pontiff of Rome. He's from the ancient Roman Empire. So what we're seeing here is a big lie. They pretend to be Christians and they say some words that we are familiar to Christianity. But this is all a trickery. It's a farce. This is a strange God. He changed his religion. This is what it says here in 37. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. He's giving up the God of his ancient Rome. He's now taking on the Christian's God. He's not going to regard the ancient pantheon. So the ancient pantheon will come up as saints now. St. Peter, St. Mary, St. John, St. this, St. that. But these are the same Roman gods, the idols, the pantheon of Rome. So it's not the king of the south here. The king of the north is changing his religion and introducing. This is a part of the lie that he's telling at the same common table. And God is expanding on this, because the lie of Islam is just a big lie. Angel Gabriel didn't even speak. But Angel Gabriel spoke to Mary, and so God is now giving us clarity. Angel Gabriel didn't tell Roman Catholicism this thing here, to rip up his law and all of this thing, and he's showing us the dark secrets of hidden places in Roman Catholicism, and showing that in 37, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. He's going to outwardly forsake the Roman pantheon. He's not going to regard the desire of women also. The same system is going to rip up the home. The desire of the woman is to be married, have a home, have a family. At least before the women's liberation movement, that has been the desire of women. And so, and I think the preponderance of the cases outside of North America is still the same. And maybe even within North America, outside of militant feminism, there might be that still native desire, natural desire. You know, like when Rebecca said to Joseph, "Give me children or I die." I mean, that was just a natural thing. Today, you know, I want no children, I kill them. Give me children, I murder them. It's a different story. So, but God says here, He will not regard the desire of women, nor regard any God. So the desire of women, as I said, from the Bible's perspective, God said your desire shall be toward your husband. That's what God says. Now what feminism says is something totally different. But God said, the one who created us, that the desire that he puts in the heart of a woman is that she should cleave to her husband. But of course, things happen, and I'm not going to go on that station now. So Roman Catholicism must be running a big whorehouse. This is what it is telling us. He's going to rip up marriage. So what do you have in its stream? Child pornography, child sex trafficking, and the nuns become the prostitutes for the priests. This is what we're seeing. I'm not making this up. If you Google anything right now, I mean, there are thousands of cases around the world where this is true. But God had told us a long time ago. When he says he's not going to desire, he's going to deny the desire of women. It's a whole whorehouse that we're seeing operating there. And worst of all, when all these pedophile priests, they left the Pope to be in charge of all of this. That could never happen to any other church system on planet Earth except the Roman Catholic Church. You pilfered so many children, and then we put you in charge on how you're going to correct this problem? Not in a million years. Not on this planet. Save for the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic fraud. It's not a church. It's a church under the cooperation of church and state dogma. Okay, so we saw this already in Daniel 7:25. He's going to magnify himself above the God of gods and persecute the saints and so on. So this is what this passage is telling us all over again. And I think I can get to the question now that our brother asked. And Pontifex Maximus, we dealt with that already. Yes. Can't escape this. I didn't forget the question in verse 32. Please don't think I've forgotten it. But here is something as it says. This part in 38 or 39 is so powerful. It says, he shall cause them to rule over many. I want to focus on that. Cause them to rule over many and then divide the land for gain. How did they rule over many? This is where slavery came into the picture. The Atlantic slave trade is now spotlighted in prophecy, where man was ruling over man in an oppressive way for gain. It started under the feudal system, where you had the fief, which is the land, the serf, and the lord. So the fief is worked by the peasants. The fief is the land, worked by the peasants, who worked for the serf, who himself worked for the lord, who worked for the king, who worked for the pope. It's a cascading system. So let's start again. The fief is the land. The land is parceled out for the peasant. The peasant works for the serf. It's a small servant, like a supervisor. The supervisor works for the lord. He's like a manager. And the lord works for the governor, if you will, or the king. He's the governor of that territory, but the king is now answering to the Pope. And that's how it went on until the days of Catherine of Aragon, when there was a break between the Roman Catholic Church and the British Catholic Church, or the English Catholic Church, known as the Anglican Church. So now, since the king no longer reported to Rome, then the buck stops with the king. All the money from the slave trade would no longer go back to Rome, because the Roman Catholic Church is now, the English Catholic Church, or the Anglican Church, now became the head. So the king and the pontiff were one and the same. And that system of slavery that was introduced under Roman Catholicism was imported under the British Empire. When they separated, King Henry and Catherine of Aragon had their divorce, and that's how we end up with the Atlantic slave trade. That's how all these people were forced out of their homes from Africa, hunted like slaves, and thrown on a ship and sailed across the Atlantic Ocean into the New World. A very sad chapter in human history. But that's what really went on. And the Bible covers that level of detail. We just don't have time today to go through all the detail, but to show you how, this is why I'm so disappointed that the quarterly crammed all of these 45 power-packed verses into a one-week study. I mean, it took me the whole week to compile this study, and I've done it before, but I'm trying to condense it. And if you condense it sufficiently, you can condense it to half an hour. That means people have to accept your own words. You cannot prove what you're saying, and I'm big on proofs. I need for you to know when you hear something from me, it is anchored on the assurance of God's word. So I provide external support as documented evidence toward, in confirmation of Bible truth. Because it's a prophecy, and when the prophecy becomes history, we can find it in the newspapers or in the history books. Okay, so I'm going to move on from there. I think I said enough about that, and won't need to read that slide. So just to show you that the Roman Catholic Church had a heavy hand in slavery, here, from wikipedia.org, says the first extensive shipment of black Africans to make good the shortage of native slaves, what would later become known as the transatlantic slave trade, was initiated at the request of Bishop Las Casas and authorized by Charles V in 1517. No papal condemnation for transatlantic slave was made at the time. Catholic missionaries such as the Jesuits, who also owned slaves, worked to alleviate the suffering of Native American slaves in the New World, not the black slaves, but the Native American, the Indian. Capuchin missionaries were excommunicated for calling for the emancipation of black slaves in the Americas. The Roman Catholic Church has their hand deep in the pot of slave trading. The evidence is clear. And, I have to always put this little disclaimer. Slavery was brutal, and it killed a lot of our ancestors. But to walk around with a spirit of hatred in our heart is not making us any better than our slave masters. So those who come to an awakening and recognize their identity, to turn on the white man and his offspring and say, you white devils, you're being just as ruthless as were the slave overlords. That's not the spirit of love. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. We don't have to get out of our minds, my brethren. Stay in your rightful mind. God has given us a spirit of love. Okay, so I must go to answering that question because I thought I had it here on the screen, but I'm seeing that verse 32, if I might have overlooked it before. So let me just pick it up here to answer that question. Daniel 11, verse 32. And the question was asked, and here's I think it was it verse 32, my brother, you had mentioned?
It's at the end of 31.
30, okay, the end of 30, yeah.
We'll set up the abomination that causes the desolation. Yeah,
desolation, right. So here it is said, Daniel 11:31, and the arm shall stand on its part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall pollute and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. So the daily, and you notice I kind of paused to say the word sacrifice. The daily sacrifice was a worship activity that went on at the morning and the evening sacrifice in Israel. So when the translators were translating this, they saw that this word tamid, or daily sacrifice, applied here. And they didn't know what to do. In the original language, it simply said daily, as I bring it over on my screen here. Verse 31, you see the word sacrifices in italics. So it really simply means daily. It says, arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. But because this is being done in the Christian era, when we are no longer sacrificing, then the word sacrifice is placed there in italics. So the daily has to do with the sacrificial service, however, and this is a worship system. So the worship system, the morning and evening prayer, and as in Psalms 55 verse 17, the Bible says, morning and evening and noon, evening and morning and at noon will I cry unto the Lord. So these, and then of course it's going to go evening and morning and at noon in that cyclical pattern. So God had appointed times of prayer and worship. These are all his worship appointed times, including the Sabbath day, including all the festivals that we saw. So removing of the daily was removing of all the worship system that God has introduced in his church. And so it's going to replace it with the abomination that maketh desolate. This is where heathen worship was traded for Torah worship. The abomination. Think of some of the abomination. Christmas, Easter. No, it's a pagan Christmas, pagan Easter, pagan. We have Lent and all these saints' days, and a number of other, I can't think of all the pagan things that are out there. The year, beginning on January 1st, these are all pagan trappings that we have today. And these are pollution. The diet, say that?
Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday, thank you. That's another one. Ash Wednesday, see people walking around putting crosses of ashes on themselves. These are all pagan rites and rituals that are St. Patrick, St. Christopher, all the saints' days. And so it goes on. All of these were replacing. And if we had time, I could show you. There's just such a plenitude of information I could share with you on this particular point. So God is meaning that true worship must be restored. And at the appointed time, true worship will be restored. Our eyes would be opened. And we'll start seeing as we've never seen before. And God is opening our eyes right now. And I believe those of you on the line could actually see your eyes opening. That these things are locked up in the scriptures for so long. And great church men don't even understand what we're understanding here. So and this is not to demean them in any way and lift ourselves up, but to show you that the scriptures are given by God and can only rightly divided when God's Spirit moves upon human vessel to say, this portion of light must now be advanced. So the abomination that maketh desolate, Christ himself spoke about it. The abomination that makes desolate will stand in the holy place in Matthew 24. And so the system of false worship, it's not paganism or something. It's false worship. We have to call it by its right name. False worship is going to replace true worship. And to that end, in Daniel chapter 8, Daniel 8 from verse 11, and I'll bring it over in that screen to show you how clear the prophecies and consistent they are. In Daniel 8, and I'm going to bring in from verse 10, that little horn, it says, it waxed great even to the host of heaven, that's the saints, and it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground. That means it brought the saints down to earthly levels. And also the host, meaning the Christians, brought them down to the ground, meaning it persecuted and killed them. And cast down some of the hosts of the Christians and of the stars, the leaders among them, like the apostles, cast them down to the ground and stamped upon them. That means destroyed them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. We saw this early in Daniel 11. This is the same character here. He magnified himself to the prince of the host, the God above God. The prince of the host is Christ. So this man calls himself the vicar of Christ. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily, there's that word again, the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. the place of his, Christ's sanctuary, is cast down. The position Christ held in the sanctuary as mediator supreme was now replaced by a man behind a veil that you go and whisper your private stories to, and he tells you, say, do 10 Hail Marys, and you're pardoned. The penance, what do they call it? A confession booth. The place of Christ was replaced by this lying spirit. He goes on. It says, and I heard one saint speaking, verse 13. I heard one saint speaking, another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? So this is something that's very important in God's list. He's going to cast, in verse 12, it says more. It says, and host shall be given him against the daily sacrifice, which is a system of true worship, by reason of transgression. And it casts down the truth. Notice that word, the truth, to the ground. The daily has to do with the truth of God, the true worship. That is reserved only to the Creator. It casts down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. This is a part of the big lie that was promoted at that one table. Now, I know that we are used to the word ceremonial law. And my brethren, be careful how we use Catholic words. You will never win them in that conversation. They are the ones who introduce these lies. Leave Rome's lies alone. It will be well with us. All right, so hopefully that helps. And I had a lot more that I said on it. I would encourage a person who asks a question, go to my website, which I'll post at the end, and it's sdaprophecies.com, but I have it in written form. SD is in Seventh-day Adventist, sdaprophecies.com, and you'll see my most recent publication, and this one is on there, and you'll see all the details, 22 typewritten pages of power-packed information that will keep you engaged for a while. So we saw that. Yes, go ahead.
I was going through the Bible, looking at desolation and abomination, and one thing we cannot forget is that though Christ pronounced desolation upon the church, it was cleansed. The temple was cleansed in AD 70. Today, there is a cleansing of Palestine. And that cleansing, I believe, strongly will take place when they put that temple upon that holy place. And they would be sacrificing that red heifer. Right now, they're sacrificing lambs, but not on the holy hill. So maybe God is giving us a little time, because it angers him to know that these type of sacrificial systems still going on when his son was the ultimate sacrifice. And so the conclusion to the Daniel 13 that you just read out is in Romans 12 verse 1, that we must present our bodies a living sacrifice. So the sacrificial system, that which part of it was nailed to the cross, the other part is where Christ is in the sanctuary pleading our case with the Father. Because if we remove that entirely, then we remove Christ from doing his ministerial work.
Okay. Right. So I know there's much talk about building of a third temple. I've heard about it for many, many years, and there's more discussion about it now that the embassy has been relocated, and Donald Trump is in the White House because he is willing to go all the way to give the Jewish people all that their hearts desire. And so I'm watching those developments. I haven't seen a particular prophecy for the third temple, but I know there's a motivation, a strong motivation for that to happen. So we'll see if that will indeed convene. But I would also say that Jerusalem at the time they were considered, the temple was cleansed, when Christ was on earth, and he told us that when we see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, it's time to flee. Let him that's on the mountain flee, him that's on the housetop come not down to take in the things, but head for the hills. And we will see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. And right now, the holy place is where true worship goes on. So we should also be on the lookout for the abomination of desolation in the holy place, where true worship is, because even if those unconverted Jews are carrying out a sacrifice, that doesn't make their sacrifice a holy worship. It would be an unholy worship. And I get the point you're making, and I would expand it to say that the greater significance is that we're going to also see the abomination in the holy place, the Holy Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the Holy Christian Church by extension. And that is very important to be watching these developments. And these are fast fulfilling developments that are happening all around us. So I'm going to just leave it there. And verse 34 and 35 in Daniel 11, did somebody else have something to say? Was that you, David?
No, when you reach 37, I want you to explain 37 for me.
Okay, verse 37.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me go back to...
From here.
Yeah, the desire for women. Okay, so let me close this. Get to Daniel 11:37. Right, so on the screen here, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. So there's somebody with a line open that's speaking. If you can, and let me see if I... Okay, thank you very much. All right, so verse 37 says, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all, meaning above all gods. All gods. So he shall not regard the desire of women. No, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. So the God of ancient Rome is a pantheon of all the ancient Roman gods. He will not give public acknowledgement to them anymore, because he's going to change religion. He's going to do that which his fathers hadn't done. He's going to take on a new God. But in addition to that, in disregarding the God of his fathers, he's also going to disregard the desire of women. In Genesis, let me bring it on the screen here. Genesis 3, around about verse 20. And I said 20 and I brought up 21. Okay, it's earlier than that. Verse, okay. So let me bring it over here. Verse 16. So bring it again. Genesis 3 and verse 16 says, unto the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. Thy desire shall be to thy husband. The woman's desire is to have a home, is to have a husband, is to have a family. That's what God said. So a system that's going to change the desire of woman is to break up marriage and say you can no longer marry, and makes her priests and nuns celibate. And so they practice sex orgies. Instead of having each one his own, it becomes a free-for-all. The convents are filled with aborted babies, aborted fetuses. Filled. And the convents are the biggest prostitution houses around the world that we've never seen. So this is what God is saying. And it not disregarding the desire of women is to bring in the system where marriage is no longer the order of the day. And in the Catholic Church, it's the only religious system where marriage is prohibited against the prelate. Recently, they've been trying to make adjustments for that because of the overwhelming child abuse and sex abuse cases that have been happening around the world. It's not an American thing. in India, Pakistan, wherever they are, Australia, in Canada, in America, it's all over. It's too much and too many to even bring out any instance right now. In one state, I think New Jersey, over 1,200 cases in the past year that they're trying to prosecute. Just one state. So it's a big stink out there. So disregarding the desire of the woman, and meaning they're destroying the institution of marriage by asking their priests. And actually, I'll bring up my other. No, I didn't have that one. If I had the other, so I had my larger presentation on this, it would have actually shown, but it's not even PowerPoint slide. Oh, I see. Let me see here. No. Yeah, there's another slide I have on this, but hopefully that was in sufficient detail. The Bible says what the desire of the woman should be. Thy desire should be toward thy husband. You take the husband out of the room, where's her desire going to be? This is what God said. You know, thy desire shall be toward thy husband.
Brother Garrick?
Yes.
Is this a live presentation?
Yes, it is. Live and direct.
Okay, because I'm looking at the date and it's saying March the 18th, and I'm saying, what am I missing? I actually just joined in, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But welcome. All right, so we're in Daniel 11, and we're doing just an expanded survey. I'm going to break in a little bit, and then we can come back at 5:30 to pick up the last part, because, as I said, this has been such a whirlwind that it's really unfair to streamline all of this into 1 week's lesson, because there's not enough time. Even to study it on your own, there's just not enough time. It's a lot of content. And it lays a foundation for what is to come. So missing this, you're missing a lot of gravitas. Right, so here, in 11:34-35, it says, now when they shall fall, they shall be, oh, I didn't touch that part at all, about them getting the help. Oh, we can't ignore that, just to show you how complete the Bible is. Yes, look at verse 35. 35 should be written right here. That's verse 35 we're starting with here. And such as do wickedly against the holy covenant shall he, the king of the north, corrupt with flatteries. So those who work against the law of God, he will encourage with flatteries. They will be paid, they will be rewarded. You can have the right to work, you get all the benefits of the state. Such as do wickedly against the holy against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong. You see, in contrast to the people who are antinomians, those who do wickedly against the holy covenant, God has another group of people known as the people who do know their God. These are the true Christians at the Waldenses. The people who do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. They'll be powerful. They're going to work disaster in the kingdom, spiritually, that is, theologically undermining the work of the papacy. Goes on, and the king of the north, that is, shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. Now, there's another part. I guess I'm missing out on a verse here, because it says that they shall be helped with a little help. They be helped in with a little help. I'm not seeing it here. So let me actually go into the Bible so that we don't lose time. Daniel 11. Enlarge? Yeah. So bring it over here. And the unfortunate thing is that this window is always a little too wide for this screen. And it doesn't adjust. And when I release it, it comes back to my first screen. So we'll just do our best here. I might have to shift it sideways for those of you who are reading on my screen. just to show you. From 32, and such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatterers, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. These are the righteous, these are the true worshippers of Yahweh. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. They have understanding, the wise. They are the righteous. They that understand among the people shall instruct many, like we're doing now. Yet they shall fall by the sword. This is a persecution that went on throughout the Dark Ages. They shall fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity and by spoil many days. 1,260 days of persecution should afflict the church of God. Daniel 7:25. It goes on 34. Now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen or helped with a little help. But many shall cleave to them with flatteries. So this is where it comes in now in verse 34, and I can pick up at my screen, my regular screen. Verse 34, yeah. And 35. Now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen with a little help, and many shall cleave to them with flatteries. So the little help that comes in is a reformation. They got a little reprieve. They got some help, because they'd undermined the system of Roman Catholicism so heavily under the Waldenses and the Huguenots, Huss and Jerome, that it now paved the way for Martin Luther to take to the fray. And he went inside Rome's convents, inside the Vatican. He found the Bible in Latin. He translated it in German and made it available to the common people. And it started prosecuting a war against Roman Catholicism, a theological war known as the Protest, and later on known as the Protestant Reformation. When you're protesting, that it's a resistance movement, but it's a theological resistance movement. Prophesied here, they shall fall by the edge of the sword, but when they shall fall, they shall be helped with a little help. This a little help is the Protestant Reformation, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And many are from Rome. Rome is going to send false converts to them. And by intelligence, notice it says, cleave to them with flatteries. They pretend like they're true believers, true Protestants, but they were gathering intelligence against the believers. This is where the system of the Jesuits came in. It's called the Counter-Reformation, started by Ignatius of Loyola. Many shall cleave to them. So the Jesuits are in just about every church today. They will be anything to everyone in order to advance the cause of the Roman Catholic papacy. Many shall cleave to them with flatteries, and some of them of understanding, the reformers and the wise ones, shall fall. The persecution has not abated. Some of them of understanding shall fall. They're going to kill them, to try them, to purge, and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. See, the judgment that was to open in 1844 would open at an appointed time on God's calendar. And on October 22nd, 1844, that was the veritable Day of Atonement, an appointed time in God's calendar that opened the commencement of the judgment in heaven. So this entire system that we're looking on here, when it says many of them shall fall, there's a massacre, you can read about it, called the St. Bartholomew's Massacre. In the middle of the night, the Catholic bell is tolling, and that was a signal for them to go and kill every Protestant they can find. Cleave their heads. And they took meat cleavers, and they killed many 10,000s of Christians in one night. The streets of France washed in the blood of the saints. And around the entire Catholic kingdom under this Inquisition. That was the order for the day. Now we are under the COVID-19 mandates. You see the states clamping down? We don't know where this will lead to. It's a similar thing as the Inquisition. Now You're mandated to stay home unless you need to go out for specific purposes. Churches can't open, and a lot of things. We're living through changing times, my friends. And this is a practice run of what things can look like very quickly. Because very quickly things have changed and are changing. I shared something this morning, even in Israel. They have the forces out in high numbers, and I was looking for something there that I sent to my group this morning. I didn't see it immediately, but it shows where Israel is doing this clampdown as well. And so that wasn't a part of today's discussion, but yeah. All right, moving on. So I'm just going to have 2 more slides, and then we'll take a pause there. So, this really is the turning point and also the churning point. So maybe we should do a nice recap and conclude here, because of what it is to follow is so, it's 6 verses that has so much detail that it's as good as the first 39 verses. So what we've seen so far is that the king of the north and the king of the south, these are the 2 forces of evil that are fighting over the Holy Land, over access to the Holy Land. And whoever gains access to the Holy Land is the power in ascendancy. And just think about it today. Who has right to move embassy around in Israel and declare the Golan Heights, this a part of the state of Israel? You cannot give that which you don't have. It is not your place to give. But President Donald Trump has just declared the Golan Heights to be a part of the state of Israel permanently, and has repositioned the United States Embassy. It was not under any threat of violence from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And all of that is coming to a head. And this is where the prophecy is tending. We've seen the prophecy took us through the time of Cleopatra, up to the birth of Christ, the raiser of taxes. We've seen the movements of intrigue that this vile king, this vile person should take the throne by stealth. And this is how the Roman Catholic Church operates. It's a system of stealth and craftiness. And, we think that it's a religious system because they have the College of Jesuits. They have all sorts of scholastic universities like Georgetown University and these, policy-making institutions, the Brett Kavanaugh, and the Gorsuch and such. They matriculate through these schools from Rome. And you wonder, why are there so many Jesuits that are packing up the United States Supreme Court? And when this lady, which seems to be the next one to go down, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she's gone, her replacement is already spoken for. Another Jesuit. There are 6 Jesuits on the Supreme Court now. A 7th one is about to be appointed as soon as Ruth seems, not able to carry out her office, and she's really holding on for dear life. People are giving her life support at every step of the way. But Rome, the king of the north, is going to have the ascendancy. And today we will see that the title of the king of the north has gone through another change. Remember, we've seen that it was the Seleucid dynasty at one time. Then it's transferred to the pagan Roman Empire at another time. Later to the Papal Roman Empire, which we're still living with today. But Papal Rome is not that empire as it was before, but the strength of the iron is still in it in the world today. So the strength of Rome is still, the influence of Rome is still very much alive. But what we will discover later on is that there was another transaction that took place after Papal Rome, because Papal Rome had lost its power from 1798. It had lost its civil power. And during those times, the king of the north had to exist. And it existed as another entity which we'll discover and we'll say it here generally, but with a lot of biblical wisdom to follow, that power was Great Britain. In Great Britain, England, on whose territories the sun had not set, would finally crumble to become the British Isles right now. It had all the way from China coming over to the United States. That was the British Kingdom, British Empire. But things would change. The British pound sterling was the currency of trade for many years until the United States eclipsed her in the middle of World War II. And we will see all of those details are etched in this prophecy of Daniel 11, because something is to happen where the king of the north is to set his campground, the tabernacles of his holy place, in the glorious holy mountain. And in that work is to come to his end. Michael will stand up and deliver his saints. It will implode in a time of trouble. All sorts of differentiated movements will take place against the Church of God. And we want to truly understand that and contextualize it to where we are today. But I've spoken for 3 hours now, so let's have any comments. This is a good time for comments and questions and discussion points, as I won't take up verse 40. We'll take up anything that we've looked into in the past. Ask me any questions from those, and we'll be happy to discuss those.
Okay, I hear you speak about Michael standing up there. So I was looking through the service with the Adventist churches, and I never hear them speak of the time of Jacob's trouble. That is in Jeremiah 30 from 15 to 17. And so actually it's from
5 to 7.
5 to 7, yeah. And so I wonder now, how can a people look forward for these unfolding prophecies when they have not even been told? But then it confirms what the Spirit of prophecy said, that the conference is no more the mouthpiece of God. So the majority of people are relying on a source of information that will only lead them to perdition. And this is why we have the responsibility on ourselves to search the scriptures and ask God for His Spirit to guide us into truth. And
yeah,
besides that,
go ahead.
Besides that, they are telling the people to reject the source that brings the truth, which is the prophet that God sent to His people.
That's not unique to the Adventist Church, and that's been we've seen it through the Reformation, how, and this is what happens, when God has more light, the devil is is trying to detour and distort and otherwise deceive. So it is unfortunate. It's a part of the sin problem. It's not unique to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Our church used to speak a lot about the time of trouble in Daniel 11, Michael standing up, but we don't heavily emphasize the prophecies anymore because we have been compromised. We've been compromised in a number of ways through Jesuitical infiltrations. So we need to be really prayerful for the church and have more engagements like these, invite more of our church brethren, and broadcast these presentations far and wide where others can participate, because this knowledge is not being transmitted within the greater conference churches. This is considered, in so many words, kind of conspiracy theories. But this is the milk and meat of the word. I'm particularly grateful that God has given us additional light for times like these. And we can know that we're walking in the light because we can announce the headline news of tomorrow's. We don't have to wait for the news to become history, then we speak it. For example, what we will look on in the next segment, you'll see that this was common knowledge. We've been teaching this for nearly 30 years now, that the embassy will be relocated to Jerusalem. It had to happen because God said it. And it's now history. So we can just put it in the column checked. It's history. And there are other things that are yet to come, and we can just check. And the important thing then is for us to seeing these things and knowing these things, what manner of people ought we to be? What manner of persons ought we to be in all holy conversations in godliness? So that is really the chief and most important thing when we see coronavirus and all these events happening, rivers turning to blood, great earthquakes in diverse places, mega tornadoes, global temperature shifts, sea level rises at very high rates. We realize that we're seeing the signs of the times, and that it is time for thee to work, O God, because they've made void thy law. You know, the president last week in desperation asked for the nation to pray, and this was a right thing. I'm not criticizing him for this. This is a right thing for him to do, to ask the nation to pray, but it only serves to shore up the sanctity of Sunday, because he declared last Sunday a national day of prayer. He didn't declare last Sabbath, and I noticed the president of, I think, Zimbabwe, or one of those African countries, he declared this coming Sabbath, today, the 21st, as a national day of prayer in his country, in answer to President Trump. So people understand what they're seeing. And that president, I don't know if he's had Adventist training or such, but he understands enough that he declared Sabbath, the March 21st, as a national day of prayer against the coronavirus. But we will talk more about the Michael standing up and such when we meet together later. But we'd be happy to take on any other discussional points, because you've been very attentive, and we'd like to see the engagement. As I showed, there's a lot of content that I literally had to just pass over because I wanted to squeeze it even closer. Well, we're going to meet again at 5:30, and if we don't have any more comments to make, then we can certainly take a break. It's 3 p.m. now, and we can do this for as long as churches are out, because we can't congregate. So we'll start earlier, like at 10 a.m., and we do from 10 to about 10 to 12:30, something like that. Yes.
Let them know that that's 4:30 Eastern, 5:30 Eastern time. Okay. For the rest of us that are not on. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Thank you. So it's 5:30. We meet at 5:30 Eastern time. That's 2.5 hours from now. Any other? I mean, this is a whirlwind. I thought, just make it open live. And was anybody able to simulcast this on your Facebook? I'll have to check mine when I'm finished, because I've always been able to do a video live stream, a watch party on Facebook, but I wasn't able to do it this time. I didn't want to waste the time to reteach myself. All right. So, well, let's find a song that we can close the room with. And again, thank you all for coming out. This was very impromptu. It wasn't pre-planned until I opened Marching to Zion and saw the request. I said, wow, that's a worthy effort to be engaged in. And since we have material ready to go, we certainly could participate. So that's why this was so, as we'd say, hurry come up, as it were. It was so sudden. It wasn't pre-planned. But for the going forward, we certainly can do this about 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, it'll be 7 a.m. for those in California. But that's okay. People are waking up at that time. You don't have to dress or anything. And the Bible study is going on. And we can manage it that way. So look forward to seeing us out again. I had a song here that I think you'll enjoy. You'll appreciate. Don't remember the title of it, but when I see it. Okay. So let's end here if nobody else has anything to say. Father in heaven, we thank you for holy time, for the Sabbath day of rest. More importantly, we thank you for giving us your Son, Jesus Christ, Yeshua the Messiah, through whom we have eternal life. And while we are sundered far apart, we thank you for the communication method in which we could be webbed and networked together to worship at your feet and to fellowship one with another. We pray, O Father, in times like these that we might be truly anchored and secured on Christ, the solid rock. We commit ourselves into your care and ask that you may guide us, O thou great Jehovah, as pilgrims through this barren land we travel. We're weak, acknowledging that you're mighty, and pray you will hold us with your powerful hands and deliver us from COVID-19, from coronavirus, from earthquakes, from tornadoes and terrible tempests, all sorts of pestilences that fly in the air. And we ask that you give us the spirit of calmness and sweet repose to rest under the shadows of the wings of the Almighty, knowing that with our eyes we will see the judgments of God falling upon the wicked, but it shall not come nigh our dwelling. Teach us, O, to surrender all, because all to you we owe. Sin has left a crimson stain, and we ask that the blood of Jesus will wash us and cleanse us, purify us to be whiter than snow. And then in that glad coronation day, we ask that you may welcome us as faithful stewards to enter into the joys of our Lord. And we thank you and praise you in his holy name, Yeshua, our Redeemer and King. Amen. And I will close with this song. I will sing of my Redeemer.
I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love to me. On the cruel cross he suffered from the curse to set me free. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. I will tell the wondrous story, how my lost estate my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free.
Amen. Well, have a good and blessed rest of the afternoon, brethren, until we meet again to crown out the day with our 5:30 Eastern Standard Time Bible study. Until we meet again, God's blessings unto you. Shalom.